off to the side. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. Let me know if there's any issues with audio or anything like that. We're going to be reviewing a Jordan Peterson video. But first, Nathan Nichols, because I've not done Nathan Nichols in a while. Sonia says, I bet Jordan Peterson wouldn't be late for his own live stream. Thank you, Sonia. -4 trillion Nathan Nichols. So that is -4 trillion Nathan Nichols to Sonia. Pandora's Pinata. 500 Nathan Nichols to you for being first. Aaron Gabor, you were third, but you're going to get 100 Nathan Nichols for being third. But in second place, Sonia, you get 4,250 Nathan Nichols. So there you go. Hello, Larkwright. Hello. The video we're going to watch. And this is... I woke up this morning. I watched a James Fodor stream. I also think Lance is streaming at the same time. He's reviewing some like Andrew Wilson nonsense thing. So sorry, Lance, but he's been streaming a while. Plus, I had this planned in the calendar. Not that he should always check to not do a clash. Who cares? People just watch what you want. Anyway, here we go. So yeah, if this is bad enough, go and watch Lance's stream. Otherwise, let's continue. And like Peter Boghossian, April says, I'm gay and sad. April, you can have 50 Nathan Nichols so you can be gay, sad, and rich. I have these Galaxy product placement cookies that they have sent me for my channel. Gluten-free channels. I'm going to eat gluten-free channels, gluten-free cookies. I'm going to eat the gluten-free cookie while I watch this. And there is nothing you can do to stop me except complain about how evil and rude it is for me to eat on my stream. So here we go.
Voluntary self-sacrifice.
I should actually say I haven't watched this yet. And I planned to do this a few days ago when it just got recommended to me. Tommy Robinson. Why is he still supporting Tommy Robinson? What the fuck? Where is it? Where's it gone? Have I like... Where the hell's it gone? Insect protein. You will eat the bugs. It wasn't a live stream, was it? Where's it gone? Honestly, am I like... Oh no, here it is. Yeah, it's literally called a dialogue. I was just getting lost in the pastel colors of Jordan Peterson thumbnails. I couldn't like tell the difference between any of the videos. A dialogue so dangerous it just might bring you wisdom, which is the most insanely self-indulgent name that I have ever come across. John Vervaeke on the left, a brilliant cognitive scientist, got nothing but hate for the guy. Jordan Peterson in the middle, sort of angry benzo addict, conspiracy theorist. Jordan Hall on the right. People will be more familiar with the other two. Jordan Hall is one of the sense makers, and fuck me, can this guy talk shit? Basically, you know, I've probably listened to 5 minutes of Jordan Hall because that's all I can take. He's the sort of guy that if you ask him if he wants anything from the shops, he'll use a metaphor that involves special relativity to communicate with you what he wants. There's something wrong with this guy where he has a perpetual need to signal that he knows words from subjects that smart people know, which, I mean, broadly you could say is the disease that all of these people have. But yeah, it's going to be bad. It's going to be so bad. Like, why is the dialogue, the aesthetic and the branding of like, aren't I brave? Saying words in my room is so pathetic. I don't know, like a dialogue. So what's dangerous about the dialogue? Like, what are they going to say? They're going to, I mean, I tell you what would be dangerous. going to Hungary like you're on the bloody, you're affiliated scholar of the Matthias Covington Collegium, going there and criticizing Hungary. How about that? Then I'll believe you for your dangerous dialogue. But I tell you what's not dangerous, right, is under the Trump administration in America, talking about how you hate woke stuff, we need more religion and blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't know, just, the whole point of the grift where, and I say grift, but like conspiracy theory, because not everyone is like cashing in on this thing, is that the woke, the amorphous woke, persecuting you, right? Society's just gone so. But how can you argue that when, with the power that the current administration has, and ever increasingly every day, as they deconstruct any parts of government that could have authority or power to challenge the kind of views of the despot. So yeah, just weird. I don't know what is supposed to be dangerous about it from their point of view, because the branding has always been like, oh, we're saying the things you can't say because political correctness has gone mad. But you can't really make that point anymore. So I guess you can, because these people continue to make all sorts of points regardless of whether or not they make any sense. That's why they're called the sense makers. Anyway, let's crack on.
Well, that's a very hard question.
Yeah. Well, they get harder as you go up the ladder.
That is true. That is, I seen a girl on OnlyFans say that they get harder as you go up the ladder, actually. Also, and the one guy I will apologize to about this claim is Joe Schmid, Majesty of Reason. Though I think he's fallen for the disease as well. Not the entire brain rot disease. I mean, like the putting academic philosophy on a pedestal disease. And I reckon it comes along a little bit with this aesthetic of the the string quartet playing it during your intro. I don't know if Joe got his idea from the way Peterson opens his, but I apologize to Joe for that, because Joe's a cool, nice guy and produces good content. I don't apologize to self-indulgent dickheads like Jordan Peterson because it's just so like annoying and pretentious. The whole, we've seen the aesthetic of the dangerous, a dialogue so dangerous. We've seen the aesthetic of the pastel colors, and now we're seeing the aesthetic of the string quartet, and they love to be in their Oxford rooms next with their wooden walls and their fireplaces as well, to have these self-indulgent conversations. Oh, hey, Christianity on the Spectrum, amazing podcast, people, check it out. Let me tell you that I sent you my monthly message on Blue Sky, so we'll get there towards organizing this thing. Luke says Jordan Hall got rich from being involved in the development of the famed Real Player. No way, not the Real Player. Wow. What was it? What wasn't that piece of software? Wow. I mean, I wonder how he was involved, but that's another thing. Let's see if there's like a Wikipedia on this guy. Jordan, he's not even got a Wikipedia, unless he's this writer. No, that's because this is a woman. Unless he's transitioned into a beautiful woman, which would be great. Oh no, here we go. We've got a Medium on him. Have we got a LinkedIn? He's got a Medium with 10k subscribers. Is this a LinkedIn? Is this going to be him? This is him, I reckon. This is him. And we're using LinkedIn Premium, boys. Because how LinkedIn always spam you with like, telling you that someone looked at your profile, and then they always try and upsell. They're like, oh, I'm going to blur them out for you, but I'm going to upsell you on the premium. So I'm in the premium 14-day free trial. Let's see, 7 months ago, he could have reposted that sooner. Obviously, anyone's CV is going to be kind of Qualia Life Sciences. Well, you can't be doing any life science there because qualia don't exist. But 10 years, 4 months. I guess co-founder. Humans at maximum capacity when they're empowered with the tools they need to make the best decisions, and when they take responsibility for making those choices. To aid in this philosophy, we've brought to bear the still new sciences of applied complexity and applied neuroscience to stake a leadership position in the human optimization market. But what do they do? So what do they do? Do they just give talks? Cognitive enhancement? Storytelling? Yeah, I mean, storyteller at Qualia Life Sciences for the past 10 years. Game B in 2011 to create an effective and collaborative collective intelligence that we have the capacity to imagine both the problems. Look, I don't want to shut on him too much because it also seems to me like, some of the things that he is interested in are things I care about. So, what I mean by that is I do think that there is value to be produced socially by optimizing the way people socially organize themselves, getting people to introspect, improving people's cognitive function. I just think that the relevant sort of authorities for a lot of these things are going to be like civil servants, psychiatrists, psychologists, GPs, whereas what he's kind of doing here, I'm viewing with very little information as being more in line with like Tony Robinson type talks, but maybe with a bit more Einstein mentioned or whatever. Oh no, stop trying to make me install a Windows update. I hate it. I hate coming back to my Windows PC and this happens. Anyway, I need to get my own beefy 16-inch MacBook, because the other thing I keep having to do, just as a tangent, is all my dot files, I have to maintain the ability for everything to run in both Mac and Linux, and it's really annoying having to do it twice. Anyway, Chief Ratiocinator. Again, that is such an insanely pretentious title. Angel investor, co-founder at Swell Inc., trustee at the Santa Fe Institute. So I quite like the Santa Fe Institute. They do a lot of complexity science. Does walk that thin line between science and pseudoscience sometimes, and like people promoting bullshit and actually genuinely really interesting good stuff in like systems theory and complexity science. It really is a mixed bag. Like they got a good YouTube channel, for example, where they put a lot of their lectures up where they have like people come and talk. And I'd say it's probably like a 50-50 split of like 50% of the time it's some genuinely really insightful, good research. And then the other 50% of the time it's like someone who didn't have anything better to do than get a degree in AI and is like waffling on about AI in the future with no idea. Stop trying to tell me to install a Windows update. Okay. Aspen Institute, participant. I just put participant on Earth for 28 years. DivX. Yeah, the DivX player. That will be the one, right? The real-time DivX player. Co-founder of DivX. I remember this thing was always a problem when you try to play games. Whenever you try and play Rome Total War or something, you download the new Total War and it'd be like, oh, DivX player stopped working every time. Like, I bet I can find it actually. DivX player has stopped working gaming. Let's see if I can find like, yeah, like this sort of thing. So maybe he's the bloody guy who's responsible for this. Strategic planning consultant. mp3.com. Looks like he was around in the .com boom. And he's still, I wonder, no, he could have added neurohacker qualia after the fact. I hope he wasn't saying that at the time. Like, I hope he went crazy later on after doing DMT, and he wasn't like that at the time. And then he was a lawyer. So he was a technology analyst, and then he was a lawyer before that. So he doesn't seem to have an actual tech background. Bachelor's in philosophy and political science, and a law degree. So what's his tech expertise supposed to be? Like, yeah, he was involved in DivX, but does he know about tech? I guess it depends. Like, I've not listened to enough of him to know if he talks as like someone who is really a sort of technical authority, to be fair. So yeah, glad we went on that detour. Well done, Nathan. You're keeping to the schedule as usual. Let's see what people are saying. JP is the bull guy. Yeah, just started Shaq. Welcome, Shaq, in your American Shack. I've been watching as well, just for you. This is just information for you in your shack, because you might not know about it. This senator who's been talking for like 14, 15 hours at this point. Really interesting form of protest that he's doing. I wonder what the effect will be, because obviously a statement like that, maybe they'll try to intervene in a way that stops the filibuster in the Senate, which would kind of be a backfire effect. It would backfire in terms of obviously what the statement's supposed to be. But also, you know, I was watching, even at the 14-hour mark, he's giving pretty damn powerful stuff about the history of America, the founders, political philosophy behind American democracy. Give it a watch, people, if you want to put something on for 15 hours and kind of get shouted at. Anyway, so our review to watch ratio is 70 minutes to 1 minute. Let's keep going at this pace. We'll be done by next year.
Today's conversation is an extension and continuation of a series of conversations I've had, most particularly, I would say, with John Vervaeke, who joins me today, and also with Jonathan Pageau. And those...
So the usual gaggle of the hopeless.
Conversations really center on specifying the foundational principles of iterable society and stable psyche. That's a decent...
I'm eating my biscuit. Maybe I'll let him play because I'm eating my biscuit.
Way of thinking about it, or specifying more clearly and understandably the apex towards which systems of value strive.
Okay, I'm going to come up with a guess here, but my guess, it's just a guess, is that he means God by that. Now, you know, I'm not a world-changing, whatever he claims to be, psychologist, clinical psychologist. I'm not a world-changing clinical psychologist who taught at Harvard, but my educated guess, as you know, an adopted kid who done an apprenticeship, is that he means God by that. I think that he is saying that everything builds towards God. And oh my God, on that note, what is that tie? Look at that thing. It's got like, is it Jesus on the cross? And like, are people falling towards the lake of fire on that tie? What's going on? I remember that time, there's this really, we're going on another detour into the law. There was this time where it was like Graham Oppie Malpass review. Yeah, it was this one where there was this video that Graham Oppie did where he was reviewing. It's like 4 years ago now. Jesus, better times. Where on Alex Malpass's podcast, Thoughtology, Graham Oppie went on to review his debate with Andrew Loke, and Camille left this comment that stuck with me all these years. You know, you need to take a break from these debates when you see Oppie's background, and the first thing that pops into your head is, oh, it's the Lake of Fire. And it looks like Peterson has gone for, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but maybe Peterson has gone for the same tie. And
that's a very complicated set of problems, and so it takes a lot of conversations to make.
No, those were your conclusions, right? Like that there is a single value that like everything in the world is structured around and stuff like that. I mean, those are conclusions. Those aren't problems. I mean, I don't have a problem with that because I don't think it's true.
Progress, but I found I've been able to make a lot of progress with John and Jonathan.
And hang on, what does progress mean here, right? Because I think if anything, Peterson has become less clear as he's progressed in terms of his overall theoretical systematization of what he's saying. And he's not publishing academically on any of this. Not that that is the only, the gold standard or anything, but it would be an indication, right, of something. He is publishing books, but his most recent book, We Who Wrestle with God, was just like terrible bunch of gibberish. It was sort of like a collection of all of his past lectures that he's done. So he used to deliver this course in psychology when he taught at Uni of Toronto, and I think he delivered it at Harvard too. One was on personality, and the other course was on what was it? It's something like psychological interpretation of myths or something. He talks about the Man with 1,000 Faces, the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, Jungian archetypes, and then he has actually these pretty good literature essays, literature lectures, where he talks about his interpretation of like Lion King and Pinocchio. And I do think those are good, but we should kind of see them for what they are, which is English literature really, and not psychology in any kind of well operationalized scientific sense. And this most recent book of his was sort of like his lecture notes from a bunch of these things, where he talks about the Bible, but kind of like crammed through ChatGPT. And the reason that you can kind of tell that that's the case as well is because of where it starts and stops. So all these years ago, he used to basically just deliver his lectures really making reference to a few things right at the start of the Bible, like Genesis. And this is where he did his original biblical, the archetypes of the Bible, whatever he called it, series. And then a few years later, he picked that up with the Daily Wire, did a little bit more. And curiously, his book, We Who Wrestle with God, stops off right around where those lectures have stopped. Goes all the way to Jonah, which he has one lecture on in his old Uni of Toronto personality or archetypes course, whichever it was. And then that's it. There's no analysis of the Psalms. What about the wisdom books? One of my favorite books of theology. One of my favorite books of theology is this, on the wisdom literature. Wisdom in Israel by Gerhard von Rad, right? What does the wisdom literature mean in its historical time and place and context? And yeah, no talk of Ecclesiastes, New Testament. I mean, it gets mentioned, of course, but it's just like this really bad book that seems like it was generated by ChatGPT out of a bunch of notes. It's really waffly, repetitive, doesn't really make a lot of coherent points and things. And
but I found I've been able to make a lot of progress with.
so yeah, what progress has he made with them? It's not clear. If anything, he seems to have got worse. And in terms of what he's doing, I mean, he's just making podcasts still. Like, you know, these beliefs haven't created a revival. You know, there's not a Christian revival of you know, he created this thing called the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. There's not a Christian revival of responsible citizens who are going out feeding the homeless and the needy, tackling global problems in an organized way that big problems require to be tackled in. There's a bunch of people who listen to podcasts, but what have these theories done? You know,
John and Jonathan. They're also both lecturing, by the way, as well as me, for Peterson Academy. And so one of the things Peterson Academy is doing is aggregating
all of the worst people in the world into one thing. Let me what was it? Jonathan Peugeot Peterson Academy. See if I can find it. This is the worst clip in the world from Peterson Academy. So here's a taste of what you can get from Peugeot in Peterson Academy. Oh yeah,
when COVID started.
And also just a note on the grifting. Yeah, like, oh, buy my course.
When COVID started, I don't know if you remember, some people started saying that the new internet, I forget what the name of it. It's like the highest form of internet, whatever, these towers, these cell towers and these internet towers, they were the ones that were causing COVID. You remember that? Right. So these, sorry? Yeah, 5G. All right. So you see how little I know about these things. So it's like 5G towers are causing COVID. And it got so far that some people actually like burned some down. Some people like attacked.
Look at the production quality on this thing. You can even get a really bad graphic of a 5G tower as he delivers his lecture. Isn't that worth it?
Some of these 5G towers.
And the insane thing is that people, the poor people who are sold on this thing and do it and depart with their $500 a month or whatever it is, they end up putting this on their CV as like a substitute for I mean, maybe that works these days in America because some very intelligent MAGA businessman will go, yeah, I like that. I like this kid. And like, you know, fair enough in employment practices, not hiring on the standard like degree tick boxes and all that stuff, right? I'm not commenting on that, but the actual substance of the content of what you're getting out of this thing, what kind of skills does this transfer to? Conspiracy theories, like that being proud of being ignorant of how 5G works, not even knowing what like ionizing, non-ionizing radiation are, things like that. Just
and so ridiculous, right? I mean, it's so ridiculous to think that these 5G towers are causing COVID.
Wrong.
Okay. Is it really that ridiculous?
Nice. Good argument. Good argument. Oh, you remember when people were saying, when there were like these crazy religious people and they were like, the world is flat? Ridiculous, right? Really? Is it really ridiculous? Got you. Now you're convinced of the world being flat with that riveting analysis I just provided.
So the question is, at what level is it not ridiculous? So often the problem is that we look at material
Level
causalities 10. And then we look at those and we that's ridiculous. Like, I honestly really, it's clear that 5G towers aren't causing the virus in your body or the symptoms in your body. But are 5G towers causing COVID? Well, that's a more interesting question to ask. So think about what happened during COVID. And imagine that happened to...
It's just like this very trivial question that he's getting all bogged down in the ambiguity over the word cause, right? And if you state the question more clearly, then it's just very obvious what the answer is. So if you say, were 5G towers a part of the conspiratorial ideas that led to political disruption over COVID? Yes, obviously, right? So there we go. Why is that? Because they were the proposed causal mechanism for how the fake virus was harming people, right? The virus was supposed to be a cover-up for people getting sick from the 5G towers. That was the proposed causal story. And so if you ask, all you need to do is go from asking the question, is that causal story true? No, it's obviously false, as Jonathan has said here, to asking the question, now, so like asking a well-defined sociological, psychological explanation, does this causal story play a role in the spread of the idea, the belief system? Yes, right? No mystery, no metaphysics of symbolism required.
100 years ago, would we have had COVID if that had happened 100 years ago? Would they have shut down
Yes.
everything?
Called the Spanish flu, brother.
Would they have shut down schools and stores, and
Literally.
have shut down everything?
Yeah, it literally happened.
And the answer is obviously no.
Oh, okay. Oh, right.
If COVID had happened 100 years ago, people would have died, and people would have cried, and people would have buried their dead, and they would have mourned, and then life would have continued. Of course. What made
Well,
it
not if they were
possible-
dead. Not if they were all dead. But anyway, let's abandon the idiocy and go back to what we're supposed to be doing.
Group of thinkers who are pursuing this problem, some directly, like John and Jonathan, some more peripherally. And so
Directly,
many of you who are
John Vervaeke engages these topics as tangentially as possible, I would say, in his work. But
listening will have,
or he just kind of like gestures at problems and tries to use computational metaphors to make it sound like he's engaging with the problems.
listened to some of the conversations I've had with.
Notice how none of them talk about parabolic knowledge anymore as well. Just to put it out there, that nonsense discourse that was introduced has died. Just like relevance realization shall die and the world shall be a better place.
Jonathan Pajot, or with John Vervaeke. Anyways, we introduced another person into this conversational realm today, Jordan Hall.
Okay, how long before Jordan Hall uses an unnecessary metaphor?
And Jordan is a serial entrepreneur who's been successful.
A serial killer.
Multiple
or
times
a serial rapist. I'd never really hear that word used positively. Or a serial molester or something,
tech founder, and has developed the capacities that are necessary to serve as a serial entrepreneur. And that means an openness to high level creativity conjoined with like deep technical prowess. And then,
yeah, but you're not going to mention that he's maybe coming at this through a position of material privilege in terms of, obviously, it's no small fee to do a Harvard degree, and it rhymes, which means it's more true in the Jordan Peterson world. And, my thought might be that if he's a founder, he may well be the connected money bags of the operation. I mean, it has been said before, it has been known that in this world, sometimes it happens that people get ahead because of their connections and because of money that their parents may have. Sometimes that happens. And I'm only saying this because it's not clear that he does have the technical background between DivX. Now, I don't know what went on when maybe the other guys built the whole DivX player, and the reason it kept crashing my games is because of bit Jordan Hall did. I don't know. Can't say if it's true or false, but this is kind of what happens, right? People then get retconned in these podcasts. Same thing as like Curtis Yarvin. They talk about like, obviously Curtis Yarvin, because JD Vance read his Substack, must have been a genius programmer who revolutionized the world. And then you like look at Curtis Yarvin's GitHub, and he's got some like weird little closure project that prints like hello world on a web page, and you know, a bunch of stuff. But you know, it's hardly like I'm looking at that and I'm like, wow, this guy's a sick programmer. You know, I'm sure he's good in a number of ways too, or not terrible. I'm not trying to make out he's like awful, but it's hardly. And you could say, oh no, most of his contributions are to private repos or not hosted on GitHub. You could say that if it wasn't the case that some of these commits were relatively recent. So, you know, after his illustrious career, and, you know, relatively consistent in terms of the time as well. So it's hard, I think, to push the argument that those Yarvin commits are not representative of his true power level. And the point I'm making is that there's this constant kind of storytelling about these people as geniuses, when often it's more that they lucked out. Like Yarvin lucked out having Vance and Peter Thiel read his blogs. Jordan Hall lucked out being in these companies that did well, getting a bunch of money. And then once you're in the world of financial services and capital investment, it's like, you know, as long as you follow a few kind of basic rules of probability theory in terms of hedging your bets and things like that, you're going to be all right. Your money's just going to keep making itself. You haven't really got to do anything except hold the money bags, right, and invest in line with rational credences towards things, expected utility. So, but what that provides you when you get in these power circles and you're appearing on all these podcasts is the ability then to retell your story, right, and be this like genius polymath who knows all things. Well, it's just not true.
Also, the ability to separate the wheat from the chaff under low information conditions. And so Jordan Hall has been talking to John Vervaeke for quite a long time, a series of conversations. And I met John again recently, and we talked about meeting, and John suggested that I include Jordan, and he flew in today to make that possible. And so we're in our conversation, we continued to flesh out really, I think the best way to conceptualize it is we're attempting to articulate the structure of something like Jacob's ladder, which is this nested.
Well, I can tell you that. Well, I can help here. Let me help you out, Jordan. So, what we're going to do is, you know, the question is, what is the structure of Jacob's ladder? I'm going to go to B&Q. Going to search for a ladder, and let's just call this one Jacob's, and I'll say it's kind of like it's got two parallel lines, and then sort of as you go up the fucking hell, ladder's expensive. As you go up the parallel lines, there's sort of these horizontal lines that connect the parallel lines. You know, like every foot or something apart. So that's sort of the structure of Jacob's ladder, with a visual illustration. So we have, you know, Peterson seems to be struggling with, look at this, look at the struggle involved in visualizing the structure of Jacob's ladder. But it's really easy. All you've got to do, if you're a Zoomer, is go on B&Q, type in ladder, and you can just see one. You can just see one
sequence of value structures that tends towards a pinnacle. The pinnacle is the transcendent, let's say, or the ineffable divine. Those are matters of definition. And we're trying to understand the hierarchical relationship between our local plans and our ultimate ends.
I don't know as well, when he talks about Jacob's ladder, I don't know if I'd describe a ladder as hierarchical. I mean, it's symmetrical. You could put it either way up. The one like that, bloody hell, you say something like that, you start thinking like Satanism. It's an inversion of the cross. It's bloody like that play that were written by Marx that was called Ulanem because it's Emmanuel backwards, which is Satanism. But yeah, ladder's symmetrical. So the kind of, I mean, this is what they do. They use these metaphors and they get lost in the metaphorical source, but the metaphors don't even work for what they're trying to get them to work for.
Say, which is the same thing as trying to understand the relationship between the finite and the infinite. And we're trying to do that in a way that's quite differentiated and propositional.
The relationship between the finite and the infinite. Surjective,
but also is true to the phenomena and the uniting reality of the transcendent. And so I know that's complicated, but it's a complicated issue. And while many of you are familiar with this already,
it's not so much that it's complicated as much as it's fucking gibberish. But
and you can regard this conversation as a continuation on the same quest. So I think we'll jump right into it. Jordan, I was watching your podcast with Jonathan Pageau.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And you started to talk to him about the vertical dimension. And
yeah, the vertical dimension, literally just up and down. I'm very interested in here's the thing, right, as well, that they are going to be talking about spiritual stuff, but vertical is a spatial metaphor. Why are they going to be using spatial space is physical? Why are they using physical spatial metaphors to describe things? You ask yourself that. They ain't going to think about it.
One of the things you both discussed was the notion that one of the things that might distinguish AI systems from human beings is this vertical dimension.
Yeah, and the other one is that one of them runs on a fucking computer and my brain is made of meat. Like, there's a big difference. One of them has a CPU, the other one doesn't. One of them has a clock. I don't have a clock. My brain doesn't function on clock ticks. Of course, any of these people would have to know the first bloody thing about the brain or a computer to have anything useful to say about this. But instead of reaching for any of the many obvious and genuinely illuminating differences, because it can highlight things that are wrong with our approaches to AI research, right? Insofar as AI might be trying to mimic or replicate what people are and do. Insofar as there are a billion bajillion relevant similarities and differences that could be pointed to and assessed and analyzed to actually make progress, they're going to pick one stupid, useless thing that has nothing to do with the similarity and difference. What they want is to say the word AI so they sound smart, like every single marketing bullshit grifter in the world.
Now, cognitive capacity is soon not going to distinguish us by all appearances. So I thought we might well delve into that. This is obviously something John can immediately contribute to as well. I've been trying to figure out the technicalities of the vertical dimension. So let me run up
It's literally just up. All you got to do is look up, Jordan. It's there.
Hypothesis by you to begin with. John,
I've been trying to figure out. Did he say I've been hang on? Did he say I've been trying to figure out the verticalities of the vertical
immediately
dimension?
Contribute to as well. I've been trying to figure out the
technicalities of the vertical dimension. There's no technicalities about it. It's just up. Imagine if I said I've been trying to figure out the technicalities of up, and well, he is on benzos, but I was going to say, imagine if like it's sort of thing a crackhead might say to you in the street. Of
the vertical dimension. So let me run a hypothesis by you to begin with.
The vertical dimension, you mean the y-axis? Already solved by Des. Yeah, some guy called Des. I think he sorted it. Descartes.
John,
I think he was French.
Should perhaps find this interesting. I think it's a development of some of the ideas that we discussed when we were on tour together. So in this new book I wrote, We Who Wrestle with God, one of the things I pointed out was that the God of the Old Testament, and this continues in the New Testament as well, is characterized very fundamentally in multiple ways, but one of those ways,
why not like partly fundamentally? What would that even look like to be characterized partly fundamentally as God?
The cardinal ways that he's characterized is as the voice of conscience. And I've been trying to figure out.
Or how about as the voice of an embodied desert god called Yahweh, who appears in a big crazy cloud and stomps around with his big old feet on mountaintops and dwells around a tent.
Characterized is as the voice of conscience.
Yeah, I ain't so sure about that. God's like writing stuff in stone. I mean, I guess I can guess what he's referring to. He's referring to his interpretation of the Genesis story and Adam and Eve and eating the apple. But like, firstly, that's a weird interpretation of that. And secondly, for a lot of the Old Testament, like it's more, particularly in those first 5 books, the Pentateuch, you are going to see God more as like writing stuff in stone, big cloud, saying stuff to people, asking people to kill their children, which is like not exactly maybe what your conscience would do, and drowning every single person and creature on earth in a flood, which is, I don't know about your conscience. I mean, I'm actually wouldn't be shocked if people who are into this whole like Christian nationalism politics thing would maybe think God's like telling them to do that and put people in camps or something. But my conscience doesn't tell me to do things like that. I see God mostly characterized. Oh yeah, and then as you get later on, he's trying to fight iron chariots, but he can't fight iron chariots. He's lighting wet piles of logs on fire. He ain't characterized as conscious all that. You know, he says the main ways and fundamental ways he's characterized. It just seems like a reading of the text that is being shoehorned into it that isn't there. And even if it is a tangential side note to some other main motifs.
And I've been trying to figure out how conscience operates psychologically.
Yeah. Burning bush.
And I think the fact of conscience indicates something like a vertical hierarchy of value.
Mm-hmm.
That is so like such a stupid way of saying something that is not profound at all. Like, yeah, what your conscience is when you have a conflict of values. Sure. How is that? That's not deep. That's not profound. It doesn't require spatial metaphors.
So
you can use a spatial metaphor. You could say there's some higher value that's in tension. But what can you read off that? You can't read anything off the fact that you care about some value more than some other value.
So imagine that whenever you do something, whether you know it or not.
Oh, yeah. Whether you remember it or not, you were molested by satanic daycare workers in your childhood. Here we go. Peterson with his 80s psychology training.
You have a proximal reason for it, and then a slightly wider reason, and then a slightly wider reason than that, and then a wider reason.
Yeah, I think this is wrong. Like, if you look at this, is like what Nick Chater looks at in The Mind is Flat. I mean, there's a way I think you can talk about anyone's reasons where you could talk about it like this, right? Like you could, for anything anyone says they're doing, you could always say, oh, and here's the real reason you're doing that, and here's the other reason. And here's the other reason, and you know that it's because you're trying to survive, because your body's trying to maintain homeostasis. You can, or because you know you have a elon vital that pushes you teleologically towards continuing in existence. But the point here would be that what's sufficient here is the reason the person actually has, right? And so what's being said is it being said that simply biology is true, and what biology tells us about the reasons why biological things happen sort of bottom out in valuing being alive or something like that, right? Or is he saying from the psychological point of view, which isn't from some external point of view provided an explanation of what's going on with someone, that they are operating because of these reasons? And I think that from the psychological point of view, you only would go with the reasons that someone has articulated. This is Nick Chater's point in The Mind is Flat. Like, people's psychologies are very transparent to them. And there's some good evidence to indicate that that's all there is to it. You know, there's no need to introduce a sort of mysterious underbelly to the mind of all sorts of odd things. Everything's just there, and it all makes sense. And it's when we introduce all of this extra additional wishy-washy wooby that we end up with odd and weird explanations.
And that and so forth. And that sort of shades off into the unknowable. Now, for example, if I asked you why you're here having this conversation, let's play it out a little bit. Why are you here having this conversation?
You invited me.
Okay, so that would be an
Nice. That is actually the answer I'd give. So let's go, Jordan Hall. Let's go. Hopefully this continues. It's a sign of what's to come.
indication of what reciprocity with
That's it. But here's what I would add. I'd say, you invited me, you stupid motherfucker. Stop yapping. Stop your yapping.
regards to hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so why was it?
What a stupid question. Obviously, it's because you invited me. No, because your mother said that she thinks you're lonely and she wanted me to hang out with you.
important to you to accept the invitation?
So there was two other people who were connected to that invitation.
Okay, we're going to get some bullshit answer here. Here's the reason why. Because you have 8.6 million subscribers, and appearing on your channel is massive exposure for me, and I make my money from podcasting. How about that as an answer? God damn it. You know what I mean?
That oriented me towards thinking that it was a very good idea.
Okay.
We can keep going, but
Yeah.
step
Okay.
by
So
step.
then
Yeah.
part of that was that there was a social network
Yep.
that you regarded as valid.
Yep.
You were willing to take direction from that.
I think the people who watch Peterson are not part of I don't know what he's on about valid, but like a good social network. I think that the social network who watches Jordan Peterson is terrible. It's awful. It's horrible. Get rid of it. But I'd go on his podcast and talk about that because of the exposure. So the point that I'm making is that you don't have to have this value in order to appear on his podcast because of that. Like, he'd weasel out of it. He'd say, but you still then cared about people because you wanted to communicate with them to change their mind or something. And I'd be like, yeah, but then why can't that be where my goal stops, right? Like, I didn't come on your podcast because I'm thirsty. I've got good ways of avoiding thirst as is, and that's what's keeping me alive.
And they indicated to you that the conversation might be worthwhile. Is that a good summary?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we've got two superordinate. Okay. What would it mean for the conversation to be worthwhile?
It would mean I detonate the explosives in my vest and make the world a better place.
Well, that's a very hard question.
Yeah. Well, they get harder as
Here we have it.
worthwhile.
Well, that's a very hard question.
Yeah. Well, they get harder as they get.
Look how big it is with the hand gestures as well. Hard and big by the looks of it.
To be worthwhile.
Well, that's a very hard question.
Yeah. Well, they get harder as they.
Wow. It's like, 58 inches?
You get as you go up the ladder.
One of the things that I've noticed as I've accepted invitations over the past, 10 years, is that oftentimes I don't discover that the conversation was worthwhile until well after the conversation occurred. And so there's something like there's a split between, let's say, the epistemological sensibility of what would it mean for me to know that the conversation was worthwhile, and let's say for the moment the ontological sense of what would it mean for the conversation to have been worthwhile, regardless of whether I knew that. And there's something like a commitment to a perception or a feeling that a particular choice is worthy.
Yeah.
And then what it means to commit on the basis of that.
Also, what's with the intense eye contact? It's like this dude's trying to fuck him. Like this is like some passionate. This is like some passionate pounding, passionate intellectual pounding that Peterson is taking with this eye contact. Like, just look at the intensity in the. And John's like sitting there in the cook chair in the corner.
Knew that. And there's something like a commitment.
Just watch the way, like, Peterson starts like rocking side to side, and Jordan Hall's like penetrating him with these eyes.
To a perception or a feeling that a particular choice is worthy.
Yeah.
And then what it means to commit on the basis of that feeling is to simply engage.
Jesus, blink, dude. Blink.
In the moment that's occurring. Right? Regardless,
is he going to blink?
Of having to constantly try to decide whether or not what's happening is worth.
Oh no! Did I see a blink?
That's occurring. Right? Regardless of having.
We might be about to see a blink.
Having to constantly try to decide whether or not what's happening is worth being part of, as you might imagine.
Okay. So I think what you just described is how
he's reaching. He's reaching for it. He's reaching for the answer.
So
look, he's kind of shaping up with his hands like that. This is the start of an idea. The hands like this.
Think what you just.
And he's going to reach. He's going to piece it together with his fingers.
Described is.
Are you ready? He's grabbing it. He's grabbing it. He's grabbing the idea. He's making it.
How you might gather.
A little head nudge to the side.
Just described is
tweaking. Maybe he's just tweaking.
How you might gather.
That head nudge to the side.
What you just described is.
I want to watch it in slow motion. Let's go. He uses those hands to touch your mother.
How you might gather indication that a path that you can't quite specify might be worthwhile.
Yeah.
Can't come Deptford.
First of all, you said that there are paths that you can't specify that are worthwhile, right? That would be part of exploration,
yep.
Right? And that there are circumstances under which you might be willing to proceed down that investigative path. Okay, so then we could divide that into two parts. We could say that you're making the presumption that there's something worthwhile in conversational investigation, which is a reflection of the logos, let's say, but there's also conditions under which you've already been set up to presume that the probability that that exploration will take place is relatively high. Yes?
Yep.
And you used your social connections partly to triangulate in on that. So, okay. So, all right. So that's not a bad indication of some nesting. Right? We could continue because we could say things like, well, this is also a public conversation. And so if we manage it successfully, then we can.
Viveki looking increasingly sad as he has to watch his man. He has to be cooked in front of his man.
Explore together, and hopefully that's worthwhile, which we haven't defined yet, worthwhile, but we'd also have the opportunity to bring it to other people.
Yep.
Well, let's see if we could define worthwhile. So what
Just
would make
looking
the
at
conversation
dictionary.
worthwhile? Well,
are you asking me what would make the conversation worthwhile? Are you asking me for a definition of the word worthwhile? Definitions in the dictionary. You're asking me what would make it worthwhile. I can just give you an answer, right? Maybe my answer would be if I made a bunch of money off it. Maybe my answer would be if I was able to go on doing more podcasts, if I got networked to more interesting podcast guests, if I got a custard cream out of it,
happening, but then also in retrospect.
So you have something like, it's funny. Part of me wants to go and make it an analytic, like to articulate it in an analytic fashion. You go there for a while. I think this is actually wrong. Like it's the wrong fundamental approach, but let me just take that approach for a little bit just to give some room. Because you can imagine
every day, one step closer to joining ISIS. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
if you have a hierarchy of values, then we have a finite amount of time and energy, right? So we always have to be able to
And I have a suicide vest, and I can put an end to this.
coordinate our allocation of finite time and energy for the moment, let's say our purposes, and the things that we can actually consider to be strategic or have plans. We make plans. I'm just define that as a purpose. And then we have our values. We want to be able to coordinate our purposes and our values so that,
you know, you know that thing people used to do as a kid where they pronounce a word over and over and over again until it lost all meaning and you're like tripping out. That's kind of what these conversations are like, I think. There's not really anything going on. There's just a bunch of like wordplay and kind of like making your monkey brain go, whoa.
that the most valuable things are the ones to which we attend with the most quality and amount of time. And so to the degree to which we realize the most valuable things on the basis of the amount of time that we're choosing to make, then we are effectively aligning our purposes with our values. So
I actually think this is a bit of a side journey, but it looks to me like that's the basis for the instruction in the Sermon on the Mount. So the Sermon on the Mount, which I think of as an instruction manual in some ways, basically says the first thing you do is orient yourself to the highest possible good.
It's an instruction manual for getting 500 loaves of bread, 5,000 loaves of bread.
Right.
Always get bloody too many conveniently round numbers in the Bible. 500 eyewitnesses, 5,000 loaves of bread.
And I think you could do that awkwardly and badly, and it would still be better.
And 4,000 as well. That's not, so 9,000 loaves of bread in total, but split between two groups. But what's 1,000 loaves of bread here or there?
Better than not doing it, right? Yeah. Because you're developing a relationship with the highest good, and then once you've done that, you attend with all due care to the present.
I'm not developing a relationship with the highest good unless the highest good is your mother.
You set the frame, which is what I'm trying to do here is to serve the highest good, even though I might not.
You're definitely not. You're doing the exact opposite.
I'll be able to conceptualize that or articulate it, but that's my aim. Having established that aim, John, you might have.
Again, it's so kind of self-indulgent as well. It's not self-indulgent, not the word I want. Grandiose. Which is the adjective that's used in front of a type of diagnosis that Peterson may or may not have. And it's very grandiose in the sense that, like, you're just sitting around chatting shit and you're like, this is what God wants. This is the destiny of man has culminated to this moment where we have this conversation. Perhaps we can save humanity by shooting the shit on a podcast. Like, it's so insane. It's so insane. You're just talking. You're just fucking talking on a podcast. And it's not even like what you've got to say is particularly inspiring. It's not like what you've got to say is full of these powerful deliveries of values, like maybe an interesting poem or song or work of art might be, right? That might inspire people to be moved to some kind of action, or like a political speech or something might be a powerful form of dialogue. It's just bad. It's like it's pseudoscience. It's pretending to be doing science but trying to mix in these metaphors from theology, and it's rubbish. It's crap. It doesn't do anything. How does that serve God? How does that get poor people richer? How does that get starving people fed? How does that help the needy? How does that do anything? If anything, all it does is it gets the poor, lost people who come to this podcast even more lost as they start to reflect on their lives, where they need to be thinking about actual problems in their relationships and their careers, or in their socioeconomic place in the world, and how those are caused politically, and how you can shape those by participation in local communities. People who need to be thinking about all of those things to make sense of and fix themselves in the situation that they're in are just going to be thinking a whole bunch of fucking gibberish about relevance realization and parabolic knowledge. That's not help. You're in a worse place, Shame on you, O Pharisees. For you travel the lands to make a single proselyte, and when he converts, he's twice a child of hell as yourself.
I have some things to say here too. Like, we've talked about the relationship between value and perception and emotion in quite a bit of detail. So it seems to me that if you set your aim high, then even if you can't exactly specify the goal, concretely, that your perceptions and your emotions will fall into alignment with that goal, and they'll show you the way, so to speak. Maybe that's, and this goes back to the idea of conscience, So maybe once you get your goal set, and the perceptual systems are they going to lay out the landscape for navigation, you can feel your way along. And I don't know if that's something like, do you think when you're doing that, assuming that the goal isn't concretely specified, that it's transcendent, you're still going to be able to see or feel which step?
Shut the fuck up.
Alternative way of conceptualizing that is that something.
But you said something that maybe qualified it, because this is a qualification I would make. I think the meta.
I think I've developed a parallel notion of that conceptual framework. So when ethologists go look at wolf packs, they abstract out regularities of behavior in the wolf pack. So like the hierarchical relationship between wolves and a wolf pack.
The people who study wolf packs study wolf packs. Cheers, mate. Cheers, pal.
Pack would be a behavioral regularity. It's acted out. And you could say it's as if the wolves are following social rules, but.
Well, you would describe what they do as social rules, right? As if. What a bizarre way of thinking.
They're not rules, they're patterns. But when you describe them, they're rules.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so is that parallel?
What? No, you describe patterns as well. What the fuck is he on?
Yes, and that's also to your notion of the prophet and the political. Right? At the political, we are now an aggregate of things that are not actually part of an integrated whole, and therefore governed by consensus, which is what happens when you try to simulate a whole in an aggregate. In the category of actually being in communion, governed by the prophet, we are in fact a well-integrated whole, and therefore no longer governed by an aggregate or by politics.
Yes. Okay. Yes. That's okay. Yep. That's exactly what I think that story indicates.
Yep.
That, and so then that vertical orientation that's symbolized in the Exodus story by Mount Sinai, and then what happens when the commandments are delivered? They're delivered in the context of a much wider range of rules, right? So there's like these macro rules that are really foundational, and then a bunch of micro rules that are more situational. And it's what seems to happen is that the revelation is something in your language that would be the translation of the normative to the ethical.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Yeah. So okay. So you think that did you know of the relationship between that and what happened at Mount Sinai?
Yes.
Okay.
And
we can add something that people generally know, so it was worth asking.
It's something might be interesting to add is just to think about the next step vis-a-vis Moses, because remember Moses was brought up in and trained in the most executive situation humanity's ever produced. Right? Pharaonic Egypt is an executive, and I mean this in terms of commander-in-chief executive.
Yeah.
And so one might imagine that when he finally exits,
he was a slave at the same time because he was Hebrew.
So he has a full understanding.
Yeah. He's got the whole hierarchy. Yeah.
That he would naturally default back to an executive form of leadership when he moves in, responsible for governing according to these rules. Right? He moves the rules into a legislative function. He would adopt the executive function, but he doesn't do that. He adopts the judge function.
What's going on with my mouse here?
I think it's the axiomatic assumptions, but I think it's woven with, I don't know if you'll allow me to extend it, axiomatic skills, axiomatic states of mind.
Yes,
paradigmatic.
The axioms wouldn't have to be propositional.
That's right. There's paradigmatic.
Yeah,
and then
even perception.
These fucking guys.
Sure, even perceptions can change, right?
That's right.
Right. Yeah.
And so the touchstone is, I want to be in contact. I want to do this comparative reflective thing that makes me aware of the inexhaustible intelligibility.
What the fuck do these people think they're doing when they do this shit? Like what, how do they not like look in a mirror and go, my job is a bullshit artist? Do you know, like how is it possible to be like this and think you're doing like good philosophy or science? I just don't understand that.
That which is most real. So compare a real object to a dream object. The dream object, you could do some Jungian analysis, but the number of properties are limited.
You could do some Jungian analysis. Why would you do some Jungian analysis?
You get the real object, and think about the amount of information I can extract just from this thing here. That's what makes it real. It's this inexhaustible realness.
Constrained inexhaustibility.
Inexhaustible realness. That is two words that don't belong together.
I think it's the definition of the genus that play belongs to.
Nice.
Inexhaustible yellow. Like
I think
how could yellow ever get exhausted?
I think there are all ways of tracking. I'm proposing the alternative to power, which is to come into contact with reality. There is an element of we have to exert some control, but this is the notion of resonance. Look, think about the moment.
No, yeah, they are. Well, Petersons had his license removed. Vervaeke is the worst kind of cognitive scientist, and Jordan Hall has a degree in law. So no, right? Basically, no. Peterson is a shamed clinical psychologist. Vervaeke is I'm actually just happy to call him a pseudoscientist. What he does ruins the field of cognitive psychology for everyone else. And what Jordan Hall is like some kind, runs some kind of like Tony Robbins thing.
It's when you feel called. You come around the corner as you're tracking through the wilderness, and unexpectedly,
A qualia collective.
uncontrollably, there's the sunset that's beautiful. And you enter into a moment of resonance, and you feel that you're in contact with something more real. See, reality has to have an element that exceeds us, that is beyond us. And
Well, firstly, what has to? Why aren't you just describing what you think? I think reality is not me. I think reality is different from me, beyond me. Yeah, sure. Like everything that they're saying, insofar as it can be intelligibly understood, is just trivial.
we have to have a responsivity to it, a faithful openness to it.
That's something that's intensely desirable. I mean, I think like one of the insistences.
Yeah, but that's fucking idiotic. You can change your mind about what you think the real is. I've thought things were real and then thought other things are real at different times. I've changed my mind. I think that this is a bad analysis of the way that we use the word real. And I think that an accurate analysis would be an empirical study into actual uses of the word real in ordinary life, not some shitty cognitive scientist sitting around in their armchair fantasizing about algorithms they don't understand and saying that they've figured it out. In terms of why there would be this one particular analysis of the word real, that means you can't change your mind about it. That's just not right. Like, I think I'm wearing black socks. I can't see them at all. They're kind of completely covered by the table, and I think it's in reality. I think I'm wearing black socks now. As I move my foot so I can see it, I wouldn't. If I saw like that I had white socks on, I'd be like, yeah, I was groggy this morning when I changed my mind about reality. I think I put white socks on, and then I would still think. Then at the point at which I changed my mind, I'd be like, well, in the past, I thought I had black socks on, but I did actually have white socks on. And then I could wake up and it was all a dream and be like, I had black socks on all along or no socks on, and then believe different things at that point in time. Sure. But so beliefs with regard to what's real can change all the time. Just why create a problem where there is none? It's very obvious what sentences mean. And these fools are just, they're sniffing their own farts and, getting high off it.
In both the Old and New Testament is that in the fundamental, in the final analysis, what's at the pinnacle is ineffable, right? So there's no end to the traveling up Jacob's ladder. And that means that the ineffable transcendent is by definition outside our reach.
There was an end to climbing up the B&Q ladder.
And there's a cost for that. The cost to that is that you can't conceptualize it completely. You can't articulate it. But the advantage is...
And cost for a B&Q ladder is 170 Great British pounds. Can you believe that?
It's like an inexhaustible good.
Yes.
Right. And so no matter, you could imagine that you're looking at a beautiful...
I swear, you better be fucking trolling Reflective Journey. I swear to God, because I thought you were smart in the past. But what is real doesn't change when you change your mind about it. Your mind changes. What it changes in your world, it changes for you. So it does change. What it is changes. And, linguistic categories don't exist without there being a language within which they exist. Our world exists in our form of life, and our form of life exists in human social space. It exists for the time we're alive, and it's semi-stable throughout our lifespans, and it goes away. The form of life that the ancient Egyptians had is gone. It is gone and does not exist. We can attempt to understand things from their point of view, but we never can. What was real to the ancient Egyptians is inaccessible to us. Real is a word in English language.
Sunset while you're walking along a pathway in the forest, and then you, for the first time, come across the the edge of the Grand Canyon.
And it's not deep, it's not profound. You know, give me a sentence with the word real and I can tell you what I think about it. But what really is real? Well, stop sniffing your own farts. How about there's a start.
You see the sunlight playing out in the Grand Canyon and you stop looking at the sunset,
Yeah.
right? And you can also imagine that there isn't a limit to that the mysteries that might grab your attention, even if
That's true. If you stare at the sun, there will be no limit to that. You will go blind.
you're operating at a relatively high level of apprehension. There's no limit upward to that. That's kind of what Tolstoy experienced when he had a dream that resolved his suicidality. And he had a vision of first of all,
Finally understood what Augustine meant when he said that Christianity was the continuity, the continuum, or even the completion of Greek philosophy. The correct comportment.
Good for you, John.
I'm going to answer that in a moment. But
Yep.
first, I want to just say something here.
I'm curious about how is it that you made your entry into the more philosophical domain from the entrepreneurial, let's say.
I did my undergraduate degree in it and then did a postgraduate degree in law and then got into entrepreneurial stuff. So it was there from the start.
I'm going to answer that in a moment. But
Yep.
first, I want to just say something here. I think it's useful to notice, again, I guess I'm playing the role of self-referentiality, that while it may appear that I'm not talking, we don't actually really understand reality very well. And I feel like I'm quite present to what's happening.
Cognitive states or normative or Elan Vital or normative virtues. Cognitive states.
Right? So it may very well be the case that I'm participating meaningfully, even though you can't hear the sounds come out of my mouth.
And you're gifted at that. I'm
There's
also
lots
aware
to
of
be
the
said
fact
for
that
listening.
I'm also aware of the fact that there's an opportunity here for you.
Sometimes I say things.
They're talking about my RAM processor, my RAM and my CPU and my GPU that I use for my vision.
Okay. So I would say this is going to be a little bit odd, but in point of fact, it actually is the inverse.
Okay.
So
okay.
I was always very curious about both the nature of reality
The guy in the sweater, this is J.D. Vance.
and what is right. Right. So both the sort of metaphysics and ethics, always, as far as I can recall. Somewhere around the probably
great.
late elementary school.
We got another zinger from Steve. Psychologists are always blind to their zero ground. What, like 9/11? The Old Testament does not point to the ineffable in any sense. That's all New Testament. Nah, I agree with the second part of his statement. I agree with the second part of his statement. I did say that at the time. I shouldn't have joked about. I regret lumping this guy in with a 9/11 joke because I agree. It is just not what they had in mind. Steve. I reckon Steve is watching like hours back though, and that's why he's commenting on this. So Steve of the future, hello.
I began to notice that the world that we live in, or at least the world that I had been thrown into, was suffering significantly from making any sense whatsoever. It was sort of haphazardly thrown together in a fashion.
Yeah, J.D. Vance has been on Ozempic, and that's why he looks like this now.
Tended to produce more negative than positive. Think about just what happens when you go to school.
How old were you when that started to become a focus of attention, do you think?
About fourth grade.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then similarly, the same noticing, for example, like, oh, wait, I'm sitting in front of a television in the context of my home, which is lying to me continuously with a highly effective capacity to manipulate. And yet that seems to be something that the people who are around me seem to be perfectly okay with. That's interesting. So a sense of there's something way off, it's way off, and curiosity about, okay, well, what would right?
I honestly would love to like genuinely someone who's like a consultant in narcissism or something to just analyze these guys. I would love it because I honestly do think that they all got like some kind of grandiose narcissism thing going on. Maybe not John Vervaeke, I don't reckon. He's got something else going on. But these two, I think, are grandiose narcissists.
It looked like, and how might we accomplish that? So you can see how those two things link together.
So you said TV in school.
Yeah.
Were there other experiences that you remember at a young age that, like, I'm kind of curious about what triggered this?
Yeah, I mean,
that's pretty early.
All they need in there is fucking Chris Eubank, Chris Eubank Senior, talking in his weird like stories and stuff. That would be entertaining to watch. Now, let's we cut from that to. If we get in on the action with...
Thank you for the questions. Please flood me with more. Let's have the first one.
Out of all the fights you've ever watched, what's one fight where you've genuinely looked into the fight and you've seen that both men people willing to die in the ring?
I guess Marvelous Marvin Hagler against Thomas Hearns. Those three.
I want to find more like a video of Chris Eubank being weird. That would be much better. Yeah, funny moments.
I didn't roll over and have them tickle my tummy. I love that term. It's a beautiful term. Can you imagine me rolling over and let them, go on, tickle my tummy. Can you imagine that? A man like me. I'm letting my hair down. You thought I didn't have any.
That's who they need in that room. Spice it up.
The one was, we live in a neighborhood. Behind the neighborhood is a large forest, sort of a virgin forest. I don't know how virgin it was. And so the kids play back there, and we build structures and tree houses.
In the fourth grade, I realized.
And then one day it's just been clear cut to build out more of the neighborhood. And the building of the neighborhood is supremely ugly, like suburban ugliness. And so again, an aesthetic sense of, again, there's something deeply wrong about that. It went from being a beautiful place of play that had an aliveness to it and had a feeling of connectedness to what I would now call, say, the sacred. And it was perfectly profaned. Like, it wasn't just clear cut, it was clear cut. And then they built ugly buildings in that place. Again, these are all happening roughly at the same time. And so the journey that I went on then was a journey that was always entangling, how can I have agency in the world to make the world less off, less wrong, think normative, and what does right living look like? Because I don't have a context that gives me any good answers to that question. Every time I go out in the world and try to query it, the signals I get back from the world tend to be...
Well, it's like when I think about my psychology, I've always been trying to achieve my goals in line with my values. That's wild. That's why... Whoa, is that like how the human mind works? That people have like goals and they try and achieve them. That's deep. And you're saying you're even doing that when you're a kid. That's some proper dialogos. You're saying like when you were hungry, you would like get a bowl of Cheerios. And that's like you achieving your goals.
Nonsense or wrong. You look at TV, the president's lying.
Do you have any sense of how old you were when you were able to articulate that as a propelling principle? He must told me that he was about 12 or 13 when he had a very serious existential crisis and started really religious material. And his existential solution to that was really a quest. Like, he found that if he concentrated on learning and investigating, that produced a sufficient influx of meaning so that his propositional concern.
This is weird now. Peterson is gushing for I can't fucking remember his name. Jordan Hall. I was thinking Gordon Brown. I had Gordon Brown stuck in my head. It's not a good sight. Peterson is gushing so much for Jordan Hall here that he's like comparing him to Daddy Young, who he also looks up to. So he's like, "Oh, you were a special child. You were the special fourth grader, just like my hero Young."
Yeah.
And
I can't imagine doing this. Like, I think of someone who I'm friends with, who I think is intelligent, like James, and like someone who I look up to intellectually, who I think was like a very intelligent human, like Wittgenstein. I just can't imagine ever having a conversation with James where in a bad apologetic I start like going, "Oh, by the way, James, the thoughts you had as a genius child are like the thoughts that Wittgenstein had as a genius child." Like, just so insanely weird, just weird comparison for your mind to want to draw. I mean, if it were just like technically true, like if it was like, "Oh, you grew up in Vienna, he grew up in Vienna too," or, you know, if you were like, "Oh, he did this thing in maths, you know, he won this award in maths age 12 that you won," or something, then it'd be like, yeah, sure, there is a relevant similarity there, and that's not a weird thing to bring up. But to sort of like be constructing it in terms of this story about the specialness, that is just weird. Like a special gifted child.
That produced a sufficient influx of meaning so that his propositional concerns were no longer foregrounded.
Interesting.
I had clients who were like that too. Creative people. If they ever stopped creating, they'd fall into the grip of their rational mind and just tear them into pieces. Right? Yeah, but as long as they focused on that continual exploration, play, creativity, they
So what was that laugh?
just tear them into pieces. Right?
Look at this laugh.
Yeah, but as long
as what a weird laugh.
They focused on that continual exploration, play, creativity, then they were fine. They'd fall into it like a child playing. You know, and so and that's kind of interesting because you know, you might.
Ooh, I'm gonna go Freud. After he says like a child playing, he touches his ring.
Fine, they'd fall into it like a child playing.
Look, he is like a child play. They fall into it like a child playing.
And so,
and then touches his ring. Oh, spicy. What's he doing? What's going on in that mind of yours, Geordie?
And that's kind of interesting because, you might think of the real as what you think, because there's certainly lots of people who are intellectual fall into that.
He keeps rubbing his ring. It is a tick he's always had, rubbing his ring. But come to think of it, I never really thought, like, why is he thinking of his marital vows as he says certain things?
Problem. But one of the things you do as a therapist with people who are depressed, especially if they're intelligent, is help them identify.
Look, that glance at the ring there was very
problem. But one of the things you do as a therapist with people who are depressed, especially,
look, he stays on it for an additional sort of second.
Because there's certainly lots of people who are intellectual fall into that problem. But
I'm like a body language expert now. I got one of these body language YouTube channels.
One of the things you do as a therapist with
and now he's looking at the ring. He's going to stay on
people who are depressed, especially if they're intelligent, is
no time for that thought. We got to move on.
Help them identify. It's probably something like a higher calling. You say, look, let's attempt.
Yeah, you've got depression. You should go through. Have you tried joining the monastery?
Into your experience and see when you're depressed and when you're not, and then see if we can characterize the moments when you're not, and then concentrate on expanding them. Right. And
I mean, the problem is, in terms of what he's saying, is that again, you can loosely characterize. Higher calling is so poorly operationalized that it can fit to almost any true causal model of why someone gets depressed. I mean, like, by and large, right, why people get depressed is going to be things to do with, like, socioeconomic status, inability to get access to certain types of material resources, being looked down upon by peers, not being fulfilled, being exploited. All these things are going to, like, cause people to be depressed, like housing problems, which again relate to socioeconomic status. And then, so of course you can, in the loose sense that a higher calling can be characterized, you can just always apply that, right? You can say, oh yeah, like, you're depressed because you're a 30-year-old who doesn't, but you're an intelligent 30-year-old, you could be doing something better with your life, but you can't because you just can't go back. Like, you can't take 5 years out to go and get the relevant degrees to pursue some career now. And that's why you're depressed. And, like, you could frame that as a higher calling, but you could also just frame it as someone's, like, material circumstances, right? And, like, the society that they live in doesn't make it easy to access education past a certain age, and there's no, like, social safety net, so that people who can be happy are only the extremely wealthy who can have the freedom to make those sorts of choices and be fulfilled. But there's no reason to frame that as a higher calling. You could just stick with the analysis that is actually useful to fixing the problem, because how does that, plus that's what I mean by higher calling, how does that add something that's even more useful?
For this gentleman, who's a very creative architect, as long as he was creating, he was fine. Now and then his rational mind would crop up and say, well, what the hell's the point of all this creativity? Which is it's kind of a bottomless pit, isn't it? If the ultimate goal is ineffable, there's no final answer to that question that you could propositionalize.
Are you ready for a fresh start after the holiday indulgence? Make 2025 your healthiest year yet with balanced nature.
Propositionalize.
Those Christmas.
Let's go back to the superego issue, because this is a very.
I've met the superego. I listened to enough of his fucking podcast.
It seems to me, to some degree, and I think this is something that happens when you do get to something fundamental, is that it has a certain degree of immediate self evidence to it. Well, like, how could it be other?
Yeah, whenever I'm right, it's always obvious.
Otherwise, for a human being, like, how could it possibly be that we could bear the catastrophe of our finitude without remembering our ineffable relationship with the infinite?
Right?
Well,
what? Well, I don't have to do that to bear my whatever.
Yeah,
right. You can fall into despair, and people might say, well, that's a rational response. It depends.
I don't even have to think about any of that.
What you think the point of the rational is. It doesn't seem to be a rational response if it's, well, we could go into that. If it's self-defeating,
yes,
right? So then what?
You go into that like I went into your mother.
Why don't we investigate for a minute what that means? Like, one of the symbolic representations of that's the blind leading the blind, right?
Yes.
They're going to fall into a pit. Okay, well, why not? What's the difference? What the hell difference does it make anyways if you fall into a pit, right? And that's a discussion about the nature of reality. Well,
what difference does it make if you fall into a pit? Well, it hurts to fall down. Like, who cares? It's metaphor.
Endless suffering in the deepest of pits, and that, I don't know.
There's endless suffering in the deepest of pits. Why end? Where's that come from? Why is it endless? Presumably, the deepest pit on earth. If I fell in it, I would die at some point.
Seems
Well, let me give you an example.
Yeah,
The person, like, well, it's all meaningless. It's like, well, you feel that called to speak that because you actually committed to the truth. You find the truth intrinsically valuable. So you would
Intrinsically valuable? Why don't they just find the truth valuable? Or intrinsically valuable? What does that even mean?
your actions are based on you holding things to be intrinsically valuable.
What? No, just holding some things as valuable, right? You think that's true, and you say it because you value the truth, but they're not making the claim that they don't value some things. That they're expressing that they don't feel that it matters, and that makes them feel sad. And so saying, but you do have values, so now you're happy and cured. Like, that's just like, you've not fixed the problem, have you? If someone's like, oh yeah, I'm depressed, by which I mean I have a low sense of motivation and low mood, and it feels like my goals are pointless. It's like, well, you said that, so clearly you're following some goals. Haha, cured. Got caught you in your little inconsistent logic puzzle. No, that's perfectly consistent. Them having enough, enough energy and the value of being committed to truth to describe their mental psychological states to a therapist, but feeling sad overall and disengaged from their motivations and things, is perfectly consistent, right? They didn't say I don't even feel motivated enough to come to therapy. And look, even if they did say that, it's not like the world is going to go, bloody hell, we got a contradiction on our hands, time to implode the metaphysics. That's a perfectly possible thing to happen, where someone could say, look, I don't even feel motivated to be here right now. Well, how did you get that? I don't know. My partner dragged me. I'm on autopilot because I've got a habit and I've done it before. Whatever, right? Or I got enough effort mustered up at the time, but it's my kind of bucket empties so fast that it doesn't really matter. The point is that whatever the fuck John's on is just shit for engaging with the actual sorts of psychological problems that people who are experiencing nihilism, depression might face. And his little philosophical gotcha is also shit.
Which you actually is in contradiction to what you're actually saying. Right. This is
if you accept the principle of non-contradiction.
Well, but then the point is,
but you assumed the principle of non-contradiction, so you believe in the presuppositional God. But by coming to your therapy session today, you presuppose the truth of the Christian worldview, showing that you believe in ultimate meaning.
They're trying. If they're trying to, if they're just being violent, that's not.
Yeah. But if they're trying to be coherent,
right? If they're trying to persuade me, then I can appeal to the normativity that is intrinsic to any act of persuasion.
Right. Yes. Well, okay. It seems to me that the mere fact that someone who's desperate and nihilistic is in fact desperate is because they regard their suffering as wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're just suffering and you don't think it's wrong,
could be part of it in many cases.
Yep.
Well, then that's a different kind of suffering.
But might not in other cases. Again, that's just an empirical question, and the way to figure it out is to ask those people, not to try to speculate from your armchair about what is the same between all of them.
That's kind of like the pain of an animal, I would say. And then it seems to me that in your realization that the suffering is wrong or unjust, there's a seed there.
Yes.
Because you've got an indication that something that's actually a good is being violated, and that's a right. So maybe this is also why that union that we discussed.
I reckon this is what makes these guys shit clinical practitioners as well. Is that rather than them actually being able to engage with people and their affect and like models of how you get human brains healthier and human minds healthier, instead they have to turn it all into their shitty, like half-baked philosophy. And so instead, you instead of you getting the help that you want for being depressed, you get some shitty ahistorical lecture on like Neoplatonism or something, and it doesn't help you at all.
In hell with the infinite. you probably can't find, yeah, that's probably right. You can't find an accurate way of orienting yourself to what's highest unless you traverse the lower realms. That's what happens to Jonah, right? In the whale, he's all the way down in the bottom of the abyss. Then he orients himself upward, and the voice of God makes itself manifest, but only under those conditions.
So cognitively, I would say, yeah, this is right. There is no self-transcendence, which is a form of...
Cognitively, I would say that Jonah processes the process in the process computer process in the process of the mind. And then when the processor finishes processing the data gets processed in the brain processor for the process for the cognitive module of the mind module.
Of self-direction, unless there is a deep, and I don't need to mean propositional, I mean a deep ownership and responsibility to one's capacity for self-deception.
Okay, now you've gone sideways with that. Now, I've been interested, as you know, in self-deception for a very long time.
Because the previous was the thing that you really focus on, and if that's the thing he really focuses on, we can find the place where there's me. We've got done something really
Yeah. Well, okay, so why bring it?
If we focus on me, we can... Did he, like, again, is this not just an admission of the narcissism? If we focused on me, we could find something interesting to focus on.
If we can find the place where there's me, we've got done something really...
Yeah. Well, okay, so
he said if we find the place where those meet, but he does actually mean in terms of himself offering that synthesis.
Why bring in the theme of self-deception?
Because I think that what drives self-destruction is self-deception. So if at the heart of evil is self-destruction, why would any system destroy itself? I mean, this is a Platonic argument.
The heart of evil is self-destruction. Is it? The heart of evil is self... I mean, Hitler didn't want to destroy himself. Hitler wanted to expand himself. Like, what?
Yeah, the heart of it is self-deception. I mean, this is, like, to use a Christian source, this is the epistle of John. Like,
just... Why are they so intent on building terrible theories? Like, why do these guys feel this need to build just shitty theories of everything? Like, where does this need come from? Get some help.
We are prone to self-deception, and that's what keeps us from the love of God.
I must theorize about what it all means, but I have to do it with the brain of a pigeon. It's so annoying.
A profound way. Wow.
What's the motivation for the self-deception?
Here's a specific, sorry, I'll use my name as an adjective, Vervaekian proposal, that the very processes that make us intelligently adaptive, relevance realization, which means we have to frame, we have to ignore, we have to prioritize, we have to orient.
Oh, we ignore some things, we focus on other things. Isn't that deep? No.
Are also the processes that make us prone to self-deception because we
can lie.
We think of sin.
We can lie. Yeah, known that since I was 4, like, you know, childhood genius Jordan Hall.
We miss our aim.
Yeah, I agree.
The wages of sin or death. That's what you just said.
Yes.
The wages of sin or death.
Well, as soon as...
I mean, that is what it says in some translations of the Bible. Yeah. Did that come from the a priori? Did that come from culturally disconnected human mind truth?
As you can abstract,
No, it came from history.
Why? Right, because you can build a representation, like you can build multiple representations. That's really or multiple worlds for that matter.
You can say a lot of things, mate. We all love to say things.
The essence of the capacity to abstract. Well, then there's no reason that you can't falsify.
The essence of the capacity to abstract is circular.
Those.
I think even animals, I agree they don't lie. I think lying requires...
Animals don't lie. Your mama's hips don't lie.
A reflective...
And she's an animal.
Commitment to the truth of what you state. But I think animals can deceive themselves because they can be deceived. So one organism can mislead. Like chimps do this to each other all the time. And my capacity to deceive...
Jordan's going to think, like, does he really think that's a lie? Or would he say that? I mean, that's all that I think these questions. Would you say that's a lie or would you not say that's a lie? Here's a weird case. Imagine chimps in a forest and they deceive one of them to go one way rather than the other, where they're both looking for the same thing. Would you call that a lie or would you not call that a lie? There's a real philosophical question. What would you call it? Would you say that's a lie or would you not say that's a lie? Bloody hell. Isn't it deep and profound?
Deceive you is dependent on your capacity for self.
Oh, Jordan's come to a conclusion.
Chimps do this to each other all the time.
And he's pulling the truth out of the sky.
My capacity to deceive you is...
And then he's going to come to a conclusion and like satisfy himself and not.
Is dependent on your capacity for self-deception.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So one more step along that line, and then I'm going to ask you, Jordan, if the discontinuities that you saw when you were a kid, how you feel that they might be related to this issue of both deception and self-deception, because you talked about the lies that were being promulgated. You talked about the desecration of this play space that you had, which is not precisely a lie, although... Right. Well, okay. Well, so then, so Dante, I think that journey down into Dante's Inferno is a descent into that.
Dante's Inferno. Dante Alighieri is the author. I'm just gonna. That's why it's called Dante's Inferno.
Entropy pit.
I agree.
You know, and then at the bottom,
Entropy pit. It's got nothing to do with entropy, which is a theory of physics that comes about hundreds of years later.
and I saw this
At the bottom is Satan frozen in his own tears. Is he going to say that that is a state of maximum entropy because it must be cold for the tears to be frozen? I swear to God, if he says something like that.
My therapeutic practice a lot too. Dante put the betrayers right by Satan, right? And so imagine that you engage in one of those sins of omission in the situation that you just described. Well, that
I know that's too sophisticated for him, and I regret having said that on the internet now because I've given them ammunition to sense make even more with.
Now that means that you've betrayed yourself, right? Because you've betrayed your capacity for transformation. I think that's.
Yeah, it did. Has Satan really betrayed his capacity for transformation? It seems to me like God kind of put him in that place where he's in. Presumably, well, it depends on your theology, right? Like, what's his face? The nice magic man, Origin of Alexandria. You know, he believed that as a Platonist, and this is where these guys, you know, where they're like, oh, we're Neoplatonists, blah blah blah. They don't know shit about what they believe. In the Platonic tradition, there's long been this maxim of nobody sins knowingly. The idea, and this was partly what that influenced Pelagius and the whole Pelagian heresy of the reason why people sin is basically like lack of information. And Origin said even Satan himself was doing what he thought was good. He just had bad information about, you know, how he could achieve those ends. He didn't think, oh, I'm going to be a bad guy. Now, you could disagree with that theology. What basis is there for believing one thing over the other? I'm just saying it's a better story than whatever story these guys are peddling.
That mysterious sin against the Holy Ghost is that you've now divorced.
Against the Holy Ghost. All right, Rick Ross.
If you divorce yourself,
Holy Ghost.
Well, because it's the sin that can't be forgiven, right? So you think, what the hell is that? It's like, well, if you violate the spirit of...
Yeah, let's not apply any of the tools of historical biblical criticism to understand this. Let's just intuit it based off of sense making. That's probably a good method.
Transformation itself. Then how in the world could you possibly recover from?
And that's what it means. That's what Jesus meant.
From that, because you foreclosed off any. And then, like in your scenario, there was a painful realization of inadequacy on part of the self, because Murdoch's character would now have to think, okay, not only did I make this mistake, that's.
I hate to see Wittgenstein students use it.
So I was at church this morning with Tammy, and I'm kind of getting accustomed to going to Catholic services. And one of the ways this service opens, and many of them, and maybe this is a constant across services, is that
Nathan has gone full nihilist. How? I'm not a nihilist. I'm not a nihilist. How am I a nihilist? How? Because I'm upset listening to these morons say a bunch of stupid shit and make money off it. That makes me a nihilist, does it? Fucking white crow. I wouldn't be surprised if Fafeki is huge down there. That's a good call. I can just imagine like a sadist only with your mother in the bedroom. Yeah, it is terrible. It's taken its toll on me, but we're almost towards the end.
the entire congregation professes a disjunction between itself and the transcendent in the form of, like, I have sinned, my most grievous sin, right? It's something that really bothers
Disjunction. Why is he putting together disjunctive statements?
me when I was a kid, because I thought it was a reflection of a kind of tyranny. And I think it can be, right?
It can.
But I think more, when it's oriented properly, it's that prayer for something like humility. Like if things aren't going right for you, especially if they repeat, I mean, one of the things you could pray for, so to speak, reorient yourself towards is to,
like, where's all the, like, look, if you want to be religious, just say you can pray for bad things in your life. Absolutely. You know, if religion's doing a thing for you, here's a really idiotic way of saying a sentence. Pray about your problems. Okay? Now, some atheists, their response to that would be like, no thanks. Great, fair enough. Right? And there we have conversation settled. That is and some people who are on the fence or not atheists, they will go, sure, I'll give that a go. Conversation settled. You don't need, in a manner of speaking, so to speak, you could say that you pray for, in a manner of speaking, upon the problems that you inso face in your cognitive architecture. Morons.
Allow yourself to come to some conclusion about how it is that you're misaligned with the ideal in a manner that's causing this.
Yeah.
Viveki.
It's Vervaki, by the way. It's not Viveki. It's ver like the verve. And yeah, he can unfurl it all the way from the top of Jacob's ladder to the bottom.
Junction. And so I wonder too, then, with regards to insight. So you said reflect on your tyrannical past, and essentially, so how you can shed that in the.
Why so upset? Information technology was a semi-joke. You always deconstruct everything. I'm upset because this shit just frustrates me. It frustrates me that I can't like get these motherfuckers to talk about this stupid bullshit that they go on about and put an end to it once and for all. Which is why I'm going to have to turn to terrorism.
The moment, but is it also, so I find, for example, if I'm arguing with my wife and it's not going anywhere, one of the things that the two of us have learned to do is to step back and think, okay, like what the hell are we trying to accomplish here? Mm-hmm. And at the lower level, it's, well, there's a conflict of goal or micro world, say. Yeah. And then that can easily devolve into the wish that one of them would dominate, right? Especially if one of the views introduces some uncomfortable entropy into the other one. It's like,
I swear to God, the last person in the world to take relationship advice from is Jordan Peterson. Wakey, get your hand off Viveki Snakey. No reflecto. I see you. What am I meant? You tell me what I'm meant to be reflected on, and I'll reflect on it. You tell me.
Just shut the hell up. I'm right.
You shut the fucking hell up, Jordan.
Actually, if one of the views introduces some uncomfortable entropy into the other one, it's like, just shut the hell up.
Is he talking about coitus here? Does he mean coitus?
Especially if one of the views introduces some uncomfortable entropy into the.
What the hell?
The other one, it's like, just shut the hell up. I'm right.
You see, it would actually be very fun to be his relationship counselor at this point.
And then the problem
with both of them present saying weird things
goes away. But the problem with that is that if you do.
The other thing I always think is like, you know, you look at Michaela Peterson and the issues in her life, and you just like, you know, she had to spend a whole childhood listening to this every day, and it makes sense, you know. Platonism, no one sins willingly.
Do that all the time, then you're always right and your partner's always wrong. And
that's your metagame argument.
Yes, exactly. And then, but so you can step back and you can think, okay, well, what the hell are we trying to accomplish here? Then you have to remember that while you're married.
He's coming to my city. Should I pay to attend? Yes, you should pay for C4 explosives. No, that is not. That is a joke. Nobody do that. Nobody do that. If you want, I've always been incredibly underwhelmed whenever I've gone to in-person Jordan Peterson events. What it has done for me is highlighted how creepy he is in person. There is a general creepiness to the man that does not come across in videos, that comes across in person even more. Like this really, it's like I forget whether it is The Simpsons or Family Guy or what, but there's some episode in one of these famous cartoon shows where, or it could even be Rick and Morty, where like Satan is characterized as like a Victorian man with an antique shop, and the weird creepy vibe that Victorian Satan gives off is exactly how it feels to be in Peterson's real presence. Yeah, Jack the Benzo Ripper. Bro philosophy, the highest stage of capitalism. In a sense, philosophy's always been sat atop systems of economic exploitation. I don't know if anyone's written on this, so I don't know how this idea got into my head, if I read it off someone or what, but I've been thinking a lot, for example, about in classic philosophy, how people always point to classic philosophy and go, oh, those ancient Greeks, that's when everything was amazing. It was all primitive and ancient, so it's more natural and stuff like that. But, when you think about it, a big part of the reason why those guys were able to do philosophy is because there's this vast system of slavery where, thousands of slaves are being exploited and tortured and starved, helots, in order to support Athens and have these people who are born into positions of privilege and are able to sit around chatting shit all day rather than doing anything useful with their lives. Now, I am not saying that there is a similarity between that and the economic system of the UK and Oxford and Cambridge, but but I think there's a similarity there. I think that there is, you will find, if you were to look at the average person who is studying philosophy full time in higher education in Oxbridge, you would find their parents making a lot of money in Hull City, London, and the money that they make will be built upon vertical hierarchies of people whose labor they use to create their money, if they're not making their money out of financial systems. And is there a similarity between that and the helots in ancient Greece? I don't know. But this is, like in terms of what people think, oh, these are the ideas that these ideas drove civilization forward. No, the slaves feeding your belly with wheat drove civilization forward. I mean, and then you could say, the ability to have more time to sit around meant there's a few people who come out and do a bit more maths or do a bit more engineering or whatever, and that stuff changes the world too. But I think people got it backwards. I think people's kind of explanations of the relationship between philosophical ideas and politics construed as social organization is backwards. People think it's the ideas drive forward the times, but I just think that the ideas just sit on top of the times. Stuff changes because of the environments that people are in, and then the people who got time to sit around and chat shit, the stuff that they're saying changes because the environment's changed. I know the Spartans hated philosophers, but Athenian society is based on slavery. The Athenians ain't living in worker co-ops, right? Athenian society is not a bunch of worker cooperatives and building societies for everyone to get on the housing ladder and welfare distribution.
And the person's going to be there tomorrow, and that you love them. Then you have to remember what that means, and then you have to remember what it's like when you're not arguing, which is often very difficult when you are arguing. And then you have to call to that spirit, I think. And that's what delivers the insight. It's like, okay, what are we trying to do here?
Yes.
We're trying to make productive peace.
Have to. I'm not going to call it spirit. It's not spirit. How about
We talked about self-deception. These experiences that you had when you were a kid, you saw this disjunction between what you were perceiving. That we have all these kids that you talked about self-deception.
You saw this disjunction between what you were perceiving. It's not a disjunction.
These experiences that you had when you were a kid, you saw this disjunction between what you were perceiving.
It doesn't even make sense to use the word disjunction in this way.
What you were perceiving and what you knew,
and then he uses the word "and" to mean conjunction. Just fucking, you saw this disjunction. Here's a locution that would make sense. You know, you saw this disjunction of either this is true or that was true.
It's interesting that
Yeah.
with a liberal political orientation have a diagnosed mental illness. Now that's self-reported, you know, and so there's problems with that. But I'm wondering to what degree.
Yeah, but Socrates, you have to remember, is a psyop by rich bourgeois Plato, you know, is what we have to remember. Socrates is a psyop. I fucking hate Socrates. I mean, I sympathize with him having autism and getting the, you know, not being understood by society, but I dislike how all of philosophy gets framed through the rhetoric of Plato. I basically, you know, at this point, I think the Athenians were right that philosophy was corrupting the youth. I think Socrates was wrong and stupid, and that the people who he's asking questions like, oh, what does justice mean? And then they're like, oh, it means this. And he says, well, what if that? And then they go, oh, well, it would be different in that case. So you don't know what justice means. I think the people who had the pluralistic view of language there were correct. They knew perfectly well what justice means. And Socrates was stupid to want to find something in common to all of them. Do I think he deserved to die drinking hemlock? No. I think the sophists were the good guys. You know, Plato just didn't like them because he couldn't out-debate them, so he had to make them the bad guys. Like, it's all retconned history, man. It's all this framing. It's all this framing from this silver spoon student Plato, and then his silver spoon student Aristotle, who got to write the history books, and then a bunch of people who picked them up and just believed what they had to say.
And I'm not necessarily pointing the finger at the liberal ethos here. I'm wondering about this immense rise in neurotic mental illness that seems to be characteristic of our culture.
Let's just bring in to the image of the golden calf, right? Because I think the key insight is to recognize that anytime a group
let's bring in the image of the golden calf. Let's bring in the image of your mum. Like,
of people move themselves into this way of being in relationship with each other and with the world that is, the word I used was aggregate. I think we've used different words to describe it.
People bring themselves into an aggregate way of being in the world.
They're not in.
What's John doing? John doing the Lord's Prayer in the
with
corner.
each other. Side is to recognize culture. Let's just bring in to the image of the golden calf.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Amen. I'm with you, John.
Because I think the key insight is to recognize.
I meant that prayer sincerely as well.
That anytime,
even though I'm joking about John,
a group of people move themselves into this way of being in relationship with each other and with the world that is, the word I used was aggregate. I think we've used different words to describe it, meaning they're not in communion as a well-integrated whole, but are in fact parts endeavoring to pull themselves together by means of something like consensus. There's a lot of other things to bring in together, but that's the way we've talked about it. That does in fact have an inevitable collapse and a downward spiral into chaos, right? That was the argument that you made earlier, or that you brought forward earlier. And from my point of view, as far as I understand it, that is the case. And so
it's sort of by definition, if it's an aggregate that isn't unified by the appropriate higher order principle, it's going to disintegrate.
Yes.
Yeah, the definition of aggregate is being brought together by a higher order principle, otherwise you'll disintegrate. Just think of like sports results, like what's the aggregate score or something. How is that being brought together by a higher order principle, or else it will disintegrate? And how is that a part of the definition of the word aggregate? Again, just idiocy.
That's correct. Yeah.
That's
and building, you know, just can't get the fucking Tower of Babel out of his head or something.
Why that principle isn't ideal, because it disintegrates.
And so, can we go here? I'm going to take it up like one.
Can we go here? Yeah, go home, please.
Level that may be more than we can handle right now in this, like where we are, but
maybe more than we can handle. Give it to me, baby.
The basic idea is that the ability to actually form well-integrated wholes that include a diversity of people.
Your mum formed well-integrated wholes.
People outside of a small group of people who are genetically related has not actually been a solved problem. So we've actually had three cuts at this. One is the indigenous mode, which is small groups of people who. We're genetically related, live within a culture that's been the same culture for everybody for a very large number of generations. And by the way, if you investigate the indigenous modes, they have incredibly powerful psychotechnologies for inhibiting things like self-deception or tyrannical norms. Right? So it's a whole integrated complex that forms a relatively stable over long periods of time.
Long periods of time.
Right? Aborigines,
25,000 years.
Right, long periods of time. But has
Please send them to the gulags.
The inability to grow beyond a certain number of people.
About 200.
Send them to the re-education camps.
Well, hedonistic demands, the pathways of devolution. You talked about the golden calf is like sequential appeal to sequential hedonistic demands.
Sure.
You can make peace with the toddler that way.
Yeah.
You just give the toddler what he wants every time he asks.
Bread circuses in Empire.
Empire
is. Think about how Empire works. I go out, I conquer my neighbor, so I'm able to actually bring booty back to my people. So they have a sequential satisfaction of lower self demands, which keeps them relatively stable for some amount of time, but not for a very long time, because it is structurally fundamentally unstable, as you said. So it will undergo collapse, which is where we are.
Yeah. Okay. So
firstly, when he says which is where we are, right? I know that neither of these people mean a critique of fucking Donald Trump's attempted conquest of Greenland and Canada as like, or fucking Palestine as meme, or Iran now as meme policies. So they don't even believe or act on this stuff that they say that expresses their beliefs and values. But it's just not true. Like the reasons that empires have existed, the causes are complicated historical events, social forces, random things, complex. You know, it's not because there was a series of the state acting as an agent trying to satisfy hedonic pleasure of the population one moment to the next. It's not even the same reasons between one empire to the next, or even within the same empire and periods of expansion and shrinking. It just, you know, again, the need to produce a theory of everything that one can pontificate about trumps the desire to have any kind of accuracy or historic engagement.
So partly what we're trying to do here, and I would say in the broadest possible sense, I think this is what you're trying to do.
Is your mother.
John, and correct me if I'm wrong, is
your mother.
We've been investigating the propositionalization of an ethos that would unite
your mother
iteratively and relatively permanently. And
your mother.
We're investigating the possibility that that must by necessity be predicated on something other than that immediate hedonic gratification. And it's also not predicated on power. Okay, so, you know, one of the things you see in the Old Testament.
Hold on 1 second.
Yep.
I think it's.
Hold on 1 second.
That was very powerful and very important. So in case, you know, other people besides us are participating in this conversation, put a bookmark on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's that. Yeah. There's a.
Put a bookmark on that. Fuck you. Fuck you, Jordan Hall. From the bottom of my heart, fuck you.
There's a lot of exploration summarized very quickly in that statement.
Yep.
There's an immense emphasis in the Old Testament on the value of hospitality, right? Like it's a cardinal moral virtue. Now, I investigated that a little bit in We Who Wrestle with God anthropologically. I mean, part of the reason for that was, well, imagine that there are relatively isolated cities and a stranger comes in with wares to trade. Now,
is good at is the shaman and our networks.
Yeah, well, it's got to be. It's only human on the surface, right? That's a pointer, because we've already made the case that when you're hospitable to someone who's truly a stranger, you're
fighting the demons. Students fighting the demons in his
because
head.
we've already made the case that when you're hospitable to someone who's truly a stranger,
look, he's gonna beat those demons away.
You're
what's he doing? Who's he hitting?
You're removing from consideration all the obvious differences, but you're doing that in the realization that there's something. Well, you could say
he's hitting the differences away
in the context of that story, something divine.
Yeah, the guy's a fucking transphobic racist, but you know, he cares about the stranger, but he just supports policies that would harm the stranger, but he cares about the stranger in a metaphorical sense.
Underneath,
not in any sense that actually matters or impacts his ethical life is all. You know, Jesus is just a little toy to talk about on podcasts. Jesus ain't anything to do. Jesus don't have moral messages that actually make you do good, difficult moral things. Jesus is just a fucking historical reference to make you sound important in a podcast talk.
Stranger who comes your way is an angel in disguise.
Something like that.
Yeah, well, that's certainly what Christ says in the gospel.
You do proper hospitality as an ascendant coming.
Well, then you could also imagine that the more hospitable you are to someone, the more the angelic element of their nature is. Like, I noticed.
Yeah, I'm sure he thinks that when he's fucking gushing over sending human beings to Guantanamo Bay or El Salvador in chains, right?
This is my clinical practice.
Yeah.
Even with the worst
So where's the humanity in that?
people, like if you're engaged in a dialogue with someone who's hurt and bad, the best possible thing you can do is to listen and never say anything that's the least bit false. Because as soon as you do that, you're in their territory and you're not going to win that. Like that's a very bad. So that's a good thing for everybody watching and listening.
Fuck's he on about?
To know if you ever fall into the hands of someone truly dangerous, lying is a very bad idea. Because they're a lot better at it than you. So, all right, well, we should wrap up this part of the discussion. I think on the Daily Wire side, I'm going to start by talking to John and Jordan about how they met and how their relationship developed. And then, we'll continue along the same lines. I want to find out too, what they jointly think they're up to. And so if you want to join us on the Daily Wire side for half an hour for that, please.
At least some good news. Best argument for God. Daily Wire is going bankrupt or something in it. So hopefully Daily Wire won't be around much longer. Mashallah. GOP, the Party of Hospitality of Strangers. Yeah, he cares about the stranger in a story. Never used a large word where a smaller word would suffice. No, you mean never use a small word where a larger word would suffice. How long? How long? Peterson, the border Sahar of Tohu and Bohu. It's GOP, not JOP, not GOP. It's GOP, GOP, not GOP. GOP, like Gopnik. If the Daily Wire goes bankrupt, I'll get a wire transfer from God. Yeah, that's true. It's Goop Paltrow. What have we become? Okay, I'm not doing anything useful now. That was horrible. Thank you for your time. G is for Garand, like the M1 Garand rifle that the Americans won World War II with. O is for oldie, like Ye Oldie World, which is where the Mayflower is from. And party is English for fiesta, which is the language of the Spanish, which is the language that the Mexicans spoke, who the Americans stole half of their land from. So that's why it's called the Grand Old Party. What did we learn? I think I forgot. I hope I'll forget. Thanks for exposing me to 2 hours of complete nonsense. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. Yeah. I thought that O was for oligarchy. Watching Old Man JP, the good old days. That was like, if I think about my full channel journey, I'd say that's the midpoint. The midpoint of this, as I find myself at the midpoint in life. What's the actual Dante quote? Dante, midpoint in forest. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest, dark, for the straightforward path had been lost. These first. Oh no, that's at the midpoint on the journey of life. I found myself in a dark forest, for the clear path was lost. Beatrice. Anyone who played the Dante's Inferno video game, that was some weird game, right? I really liked that game. Yeah, maybe I should do more. Maybe this would be a good idea to do some review. Like this morning when I was watching James's stream, he said if anyone has suggestions for things they'd like to see, to leave them. And I left a big list of about like 10 that were pretty productive. And maybe I could myself do even some of those things that I was suggesting James do. The problem is that if I do it, it will be less well informed and more wronger. But nevertheless, what's the worst can happen? What's the worst that can happen? Sadly, it is important to market as nonsense over and over. Yeah, that's true as well. There's always fresh intake of people into the pipeline is the problem. So, you know, like while I have comments on videos from 4 or 5 years ago, like, oh, I was into Peterson, I'm glad you pointed out the issues, whatever. You know, those people moved on with their life. They ain't producing reviews of Peterson. You know, there's people I come across now in the Paul Vanderklay little corner of the internet thing who got no idea about me. Not that they shit, like, not that it's all about me or something, but what I mean is, like, there's a period of time, 2018 to 2020, where I'm the boogeyman of the little corner. I'm like the biggest gossip, and you know, the rate of churn in these environments for people who are lost and seeking religious substitutes is so high that you get new people come in and they're not even aware of like some criticisms of these views that have been around, and it's good to refresh those criticisms and resurrect them so people can hear criticisms of the things that Vervaeke and Peterson and stuff are saying and have been saying for years. Yeah, having a look at that Pew survey would be a good one. Am I still a critic of Kastrup? Yeah. If anything, I think he's got worse, but I think he's all right on politics, weirdly enough. But on philosophy, awful. I don't know what's wrong with that guy. Honestly, don't know what's wrong with that guy. Like, he gets so mad as well about it's like if you don't believe in his incoherent metaphysics, then you're like a bad person. And it's so weird. Yeah, Aaron Gabor says the energy directed to something you don't hate might be beneficial for everyone. Probably true, actually. That's probably true. So I should probably do some more positive reviews. Look at my hair coming out by the clump as life tears me apart. Life ain't going how I thought it'd go. Life ain't going how I thought it'd go. I remember the year was 2022. I was in my mid-20s, increasing in health. I thought my opportunities were many. Hey, Nathan, we were talking about putting numbers on happiness a while back. Did you want to talk a bit about that? Yeah, we can talk about that at some point. I can't remember, but happy to talk about it. Probably going to go now, though, and make some food. Oh, yeah, I should review that Goff Skydive Phil video. That was quite a good one. I want the manliness to overflow. If the manliness overflows too much, then I can never have at least the opportunity of transitioning to a beautiful woman. Align your values vertically to elevate towards what you really love. I also had this annoying ingrown hair on my chin. I think I've almost got it, though. this morning I sliced it with a razor, and I think I got the hair follicle out. It's my stretchy bloody collagen. Okay, here's my one. If anyone is actually like a researcher in psychology or whatever, here's my one mad theory that I've got. So I got the stretchy collagen, and the stretchy collagen makes my skin do these annoying ingrown hairs, and it's also given me issues with like ligament tears and things like that. But also, obviously, the stretchy collagen is in the tissues in my brain and stuff as well. So my mad theory is that I reckon that there is a causal link between the stretchy collagen and autism/ADHD, certain neurodivergent disorders. I mean, I say super orders, autism master race. Think about it. Do some research. It was on a Substack chat. Yeah, we can talk about it, the dude. We'll talk it, like, just find a way to message me on Substack, message me on Discord, and we'll talk about it at some point. Oh yeah, no, I do remember. Yeah, it was in Amos Wallens did that live stream, right? And I was moaning about something. I don't know what I was moaning about. Damn, goddamn, I've been falsified by science. It's that easy, folks. It's that easy to do science. Maybe you've got the metaphysical stretchy collagen. Or it's a false diagnosis. It's a false diagnosis. We've Mauryan shifted your diagnosis away. Yeah, what was I getting annoyed? I just get annoyed about a lot of these. Look, I like EA sometimes. Some of the things, but some of these super idealistic, rationalistic folks are so misguided with their analyses of what words mean, like good. Honestly, I can't remember his argument from grounding that much. I reckon I probably am just going to reject. I can't remember if he accepted or denied in that book. It's been years since I read it. The possibility of infinite chains of contingent explanation, but I don't see a problem with it. I can't remember. I mean, I remember him being pretty good, so I don't think you say something as cheap as they're impossible, but maybe he does do that. And I mean, I obviously don't buy it, but I can't remember why I don't buy it or what it even really was. Oh no, it was like explanation. He talks about like historical explanations standing in need of an explanation. I think it within the way he's thinking about things, there is a kind of reification of propositional content, right? So when he's talking about explanations there, he doesn't mean like physical etchings on a page or behaviors, whatever. You know, he means like what those things express, which is the propositions. And it's like what explains those true things. Like there's a whole metaphysics of propositions and correspondence that I don't buy into, that motivates thinking about the problems the way he does when it comes to like a theory of everything. And so from my point of view, just none of those questions exist because I don't think of explanations and language the way he does, or I don't believe that propositions exist in the way he thinks of them. So that's what I think about it. Should that do anything for you? I don't know. Can you bend your fingers really far backwards? I don't know what really far is. I can do all the things. But honestly, my body's been in more pain recently. My girlfriend is saying that it's because I have autism burnout because of various things. So I've been experiencing loads of I've just been feeling so old and like fucked up, and I think I'm sensorily overloaded, and what reason I'm saying that is because I'm like, my body ain't as flexible as it used to be. Like I used to, a couple of years ago, you know, my mobility was like perfect, exceptional mobility, control through full ranges of movement for all joints. And now, like, you know, I can barely even get out of bed in the morning. I'm 28 years old. It's crazy. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, I'm in so much pain. Take off the stretchy collagen. Autismos or stretchy putty brained. I agree. Why don't you comment on Alex O'Connor's videos? It would sell well. Maybe that's right. I just don't want to. I get too snarky. It annoys me a bit too much. Like, it annoys me as much as the Jordan Peterson stuff, unfortunately. And I don't want to be a snarky asshole, but yeah, the shrimp thing's pretty pointless. But the point about stunning them first before killing them, I'm actually fine with. It's more a lot of the reasoning that underpins that. I actually don't think that they're right about what they think about pain and utils and counting and stuff like that. But I'm still fine. Like, I'm still on board with the stunning them first thing, and I'm not on board with like there's this old argument of Matthews actually from when he was a wee boy, and I just think he's not changed a bit since he made this video, and it basically expresses everything that it is, in my view, like wrong with his way of thinking.
Given the choice, which should one prevent? 1 innocent people from being horrendously tortured, or 10 with 3 factorial signs people, well, assuming that we lived in a universe with that many people, from getting slightly irritating specks of dust in their eyes that are forgotten about 5 seconds later? The common sense view is that the person should prevent the torture. I shall argue that the common sense view is wrong. Instead, one should prevent the massive numbers of dust specks. That there must be some number of dust specks that can outweigh the badness of torture.
And I'm sorry for like hating on some 12-year-old here, but like, you know, I just don't know why he ever. Okay, I've now figured out who White Crow is. I genuinely didn't know who White Crow was this whole time, and I've now figured it out. All the comments and things made sense. So this to me in Matthew's intellectual history says a lot. Sometime close to this, oh, he's got a little he's got a gold star certificate on in the background as well. It is very cute. So for some reason, God knows why, this got into his head at some point. This idea of like overturning a moral intuition through a simple story about counting patches of pain and pleasure, right? And I don't know what it is that's satisfying to him about it. It's like, is it satisfying because people initially would have thought one thing, but I can be smart and make them say the opposite of what they would in the first place, and that's like a sense of power and control, and it's an exhibition of the power of the intellect, and or something like that, you know. I don't know what it is that he found satisfying about this, but he's basically just running with the same thing. Like, when was this? Oh, it's 3 years ago, but still 4 years later, April the 7th, 2021, it's coming up to the 7th again, 4 years ago, He's basically just running with the exact same thing now. Like nothing has changed about the way he's thinking about this. It all just boils down to this assertion. But why think that, right? Is the question.
When arguing for the common sense view that we should prioritize preventing torture, one could defend the following view, which I shall refer to as the lexical difference view. According to the lexical difference view,
I'm also not going to really like attack his arguments here that he had like 4 years ago, because that is kind of like, why do that? But
there are some types of suffering that are so heinous that no lower level sufferings can ever outweigh. However, this view seems clearly mistaken. Suppose that we were deciding between one torture that was causing 1,000 units of pain, which will take to be the amount of pain caused by tortures on average, or versus 1,000 tortures, each causing 999 units of pain. It seems clear that the 1,000 tortures would clearly be worse.
It seems clear that my conclusion would clearly be the right one. Why? Like that is the whole point, right? Is like for someone who doesn't, or I'm not saying this to attack Matthew's argument, but what frustrates me is that this is the same way he thinks now. And like, there's no progression in depth. It's just the same thing. And there's no like analysis of what it is that makes that so appealing to his mind, and why someone who isn't just impressed by this seeming would think that, you know? And all we get is like more and more stories that embed the exact same claim. Like rather than getting some new thing, you know, we just get more stories that will compare the same thing.
Now we can just do this.
We'll say like count quantity versus individual, you know.
Process again, which would be worse, 1,000 tortures with 999 units of pain, or 1,000,000 tortures, each with 998 units of pain. This process can continue until we conclude that some...
I'm going to defend baby Matthew. And who said that? Who said, okay, Blamtastic, Gabriel, I love you, Gabriel, not in that way, but I cannot have Matthew being treated this way. I want to, maybe I'll put you in timeout for saying he needs to get laid. I cannot have people harming Matthew in this way.
Vast numbers of torture, each inflicting as much misery as a speck of dust, should be preferred to one torture, causing 1,000 units of pain. To hold the view that there's a lexical difference between different types of pain.
A lexical difference. Like, again, you know, okay, I'll just say
each inflicting as much misery as a speck of dust should be preferred to one torture, causing 1,000 units of pain. To hold the view that there's a lexical difference between different types of pain, one would have to hold the view that there's some threshold of pain, which has the odd characteristic of being the cutoff point. At this cutoff point, any tiny amount of suffering above the cutoff outweighs any amount of suffering below the cutoff. For example, if one claims that the cutoff point is if given the choice between preventing one person from having $5 stolen, which would clearly be a liberty violation,
yeah, just another,
and we should devote no money to preventing disease until all theft had been or suffering are so different that they can't be compared. Yet this view is also wrong. The pain of losing a loved one is a very different type of pain than the pain of a toe stub. Yet it's clear that losing a loved one is far worse than a toe stub. Difference does not mean that they're incomparable. So I hope that when you're next confronted with the opportunity
for all cases or for that case, yeah,
to prevent huge numbers of people from experiencing dust specks or a single torture, you'll go about choosing the dust specks. Thanks for.
Yeah, that is. I don't know if he. This is what perplexes me a little bit about him as well. Is that I don't know if, like, in doing that, he's like edgy conclusion and that will be clickbaity and draw attention, because that seems to be the direction he goes with some of his like Substack articles, or genuinely if he's just convinced of that stuff. Just to be fair, the reason I'm doing this is because we should probably like find something cringe from my past. This is eight years ago. 8 years ago. My God, 8 years. And look at my bald head as well. I was like full on. I'm ready to make Britain back British. Do you know what I mean? Look at that. I'm proper ready to make Britain. I want Britain to be back British. You got interracial law and the Muslimic infidels. See, it's so cringe. I can't even watch it. The most cringe one will be when this like 40-year-old man. No, I get like double leg by some 40-year-old man. Honestly, I can't even watch it. Why do I look like that, bro? That is the most autistic look. Look at that. Look at that booty as well. Oh my God. There'll be one that makes me look better somewhere. There's one that makes me look better. Where is he? That's the question. Got my fucking hell, chief. Oh, this is an interesting one. I was going to get this guy to give me a tattoo as well. We could probably find me breaking the law in this one. Oh, look at that. See? 78. Oi, oi. God, my life was better when I was that age. 7 years ago. What's he doing? This is definitely not a 60 zone, is all I'm going to say. But that officer, this was a motorbike configured in meters per second for scientific purposes. I remember now. I kind of miss it a bit. But then it's always never enough, you know, like you like it's fun while you're doing it, but then it's like over and it's like why do that, and why is it so risky and scary? John B. Will, Andy the Lion poured event. Fucking hell, but that was awful. I can't listen to that. I can't watch that. It's gonna be so bad. First engagement with S.J. Thompson. First engagement with John Book. He ain't talked to me in a few years now, has he? Don't know where this person is. Haven't heard of Veckel in a while. Matt Slick. Good old days. Mitsubishi Lancer. Miss me, Mitsubishi Lancer. 4 years ago is when I had my Mitsubishi Lancer. Jesus Christ, look at this. Look at this guy. Can you believe it? Look at this motherfucker. Oh my God.
So randomly yesterday, this video
Oh my God, and I sound like that.
by Neil deGrasse Tyson came up on my YouTube feed. It's about a year
Oh my God.
old, so I'm not exactly sure why
I sound proper northern as well.
it's being
Grime sounds better in a northern accent.
recommended, but I guess it's the type of thing I usually watch and search for. And
fucking hell, man.
well, then he wouldn't permit suffering. Evil argument. Then we have to.
Jesus Christ. Can't even do that. Can't be doing that. Can't be doing that. I know there's some better cool videos in this, isn't there? Oi. Get some, son. Get fucking neon bellied. Also, all I'm going to say is Sai was on roids and I'm 21. So here's me beating. I was a blue belt at the time. Sai's a purple belt. Andy's on gear. And, you know, it ain't going too bad for me. Hey, man's used to like being an animal. That period of my life's over now, innit? Hui, go get the underhook, brother. Gonna eat ya. Got a smash man. Got a chase man down. Chase man down. Boosh. Nah, look at that, those retarded ass stuff. Probably, if there's any Americans watching, I apologize for the quality of wrestling in the UK. It's catch as catch can. Bush. Look at that, just get sprawled straight on my spine. And also, I didn't know any judo back then as well. Look, this is 7 years ago, guys. I didn't know any judo back then. Jeffin broke his ankle a couple of weeks later. Look at that. Bush, why don't, you know. Whoosh. So all those years ago, where did it get me? Where did it get me? Got me to being disabled. Got me bottom side control under Sean Lomas. Fucking hell, he was just determined to pin me down as well. Why did I lose this one? What happened for me to... How did it get turned over, you know? I can't remember what happened in this one. Did he actually sweep me or something? Did it go from a scramble to... I even had his back as well. So what happened? Why did I end up on bottom side? Oh, am I not going to come up here? Is he going to like reverse me? Oh my God, what am I doing? I should have bailed to the side there. That is here. Is here. Here, what I would have done now, I wouldn't have... See how I'm trying to like keep that underhook underneath his control? I would have actually bailed on that now and come out to the back and gone octopus. So I would have, with my arm, I would have pulled it out and grabbed on his lat and clamped it the fuck down. And with my right leg up in his chest, I would have used that to control his torso. So even if he was strong enough to control me, I'd be latched onto him and move where he went. And then I would have just turned the corner again, put him down, and stayed on the back. But heyo, you live and you learn. And sometimes a match gets won by someone just staying in fucking side control for ages. What else have we got? Graham sounds better in a northern accent. Some of these is bad. This one annoys me to this day that I lost it. This one I shouldn't have lost. This guy is I don't know if he's a black belt or brown belt now. Brown belt. He'll be one of the I don't know if I want to say one of the leading competitors on the UK scene now, but like he's kind of up there, especially for his age. But the big rig, I just couldn't sweep him. But he did not have a chance getting past my guard. Also, he's a judo black belt, so he does get one big. I think. What does he get? Like a Tayatoshi or something on me. Look at that. If I come up here, it would have been good as well. You know, we got the shitty pajama wrestling. My judo is so bad. If my judo had been better at the time, I reckon I could have done more with... Oi, like, is that where he gets the throw? Is that the throw? Yeah, this is the throw. Actually pretty good, but I come up on that. I ain't having it. Bosh, sit down. And look, as soon as he's on bottom and I'm on top as well, my half passing is just so much better. Look, I'm having it. Ain't no one stands a chance with my half passing. Dosh, I'm on you. But he does a good job here, actually, of hustling to keep me in his guard. We got this bullshit half guard. Also, Sean McDowell, most biased referee in the world, doesn't help for some of this. But here, I'm doing good there. But what I could have done is with my shin, I could have captured inside his thigh here, I reckon, and worked my way up into mount a bit better too. So I think if I brought my heel to my butt and captured his knee, that, and I probably what I would have done now is, like, I don't know if it's still popular because I've not been training for like a year, but there was the Joseph Chen deep half passing stuff. So I would have actually, with this, I would have fought for an underhook, gone under his elbow, built his elbow right up here, and then kind of like, you know, keeping his arms up here with my head, like everything nice and tight up, and then I would have worked the flat of my foot here onto his knee. But it's harder now. He's got that. And the problem is here, I'm just not going for that. I'm just not going for that underhook. And he's put me in, he just like holds me in half guard for the entire rest of the match, doesn't he? Like, nothing gonna happen. Bush, oi, try it, son. Sit down, but not aggressive enough. That's actually a pretty cool little sequence, isn't it? Fair play to him. Fair play. He did try this sub. So I think I still got. Maybe I've got those boxes on today. No, I've not got those boxes on today. Yeah, look, this is pretty good actually. Am I on 1 speed? Yeah, I'm on 1 speed. This is normal speed. Bosch, hop over the top. Look at the athleticism. Sit down. Also, hips in for those shitty hip bump sweeps. This is a little trick that served me well through the years is, you know how people always go for like those hip bump sweeps? If you drive your glutes up in like this, people just can't do it. It just completely kills it. Oh yeah, this was annoying as well. I had my here. What I would have done different here in my posturing up is, after this, what I worked on for a while, maybe like 6 months actually, was where my frames went for posturing up. So I would have put my frames on his lapels together, one in the center, one on the hip, like super straight, and then stood up. And I did work on that a lot, but then he was like, "Oh, you're gonna get penalized." So I was like, "Shit, I got to work." And I just couldn't. Look, you just spend the whole match with him clinging on, doing fuck all, and it's all because he knows that if I can get out, my guard passing is too sick for him. Couldn't wedge my knee up his arse enough. Unfortunately, look at that. Look at that. And he's going to give him the fucking penalty. God damn it. God damn it. I'll never get over it. Okay. Anyway, can't train, need spine surgery. Need spine surgery. I'm done. I'm disabled now. I'm a disabled autistic person. Fix the uniform, ref, take it on. Knowing it isn't sexual makes me see it as a waste. What's up with my spine? I'll tell you what's up with my spine. We're going to reveal some personal medical documents online. MRI results. Over 10 years, I've had slip discs in my spine. I should probably hide my NHS number so no one can commit fraud on me. I think I herniated my first disc when I was about 19. So I had pretty bad back pain most of the time I was training BJJ. But May last year, so almost a year ago now, I got this MRI done. And remember, it was 5 months before this in December. That was my most recent I reckon, herniation rupture of the annulus, which is the tough bit around the outside of the disc. Because I was squatting, and I remember as I came up on this last rep, I just felt like, and then I was just in agony for like 5 weeks, and paralyzed in my left leg. Couldn't feel it or anything. It was really bad. But all throughout that previous year, you know, like 6 months previously, I had hurt it as well, hurt my disc, and I had like problems walking and stuff. So yeah, I reckon, I've not seen the actual images, but I reckon that there's all sorts of mangled disc bits wrapped around nerves and stuff that could do with being cut out. Degenerate disc L5S1, loss of disc height and disc hydration, circumferential bulge, and osteophyte touching without impinging on the S1 roots. I reckon there might be a bit of impingement now. Moderate left-sided foraminal stenosis. I think that is pinching on nerves as well. Secondary to loss of disc height and foraminal disc osteophytes. Without definite L5 root compression, again, I think that there is root compression now, but it's hard to say, right? But the L4, L5 disc is dehydrated. There's a broad-based left paracentral prolapse impinging on the left L5 root in the lateral recess. No foraminal compression, no discal degeneration proximally. That's interesting. No proximal neural compression, no significant facial osteoarthritis. Significant. So I guess my facet joints are good. Yay. Heard that can be painful. No distal cord equina. Few. I mean, or not few, because at least if I had cord equina, I'd get surgery. I wouldn't have to live this way. So yeah. Double dipping on disabilities. Yeah, I have constant spinal pain. Like I said, I can't get up in the morning. I can't do the things I want in the gym. I can't go for, sometimes like I start going to get the train to work and I start like limping and I have to like hold my body the whole way on the train. Sometimes when I like stand up, or if I stand at an angle or something, like I will just randomly get like I can't, fuck, I just did it then actually. Like I can't just control, the pain will happen and like I can't control my body anymore. It's not just like I had the disc pain for like 10 plus years, you know. It's not just the disc, there's something gone wrong there. Fenton's a 10th planet brown. So chat on Discord where you nearly guessed based on my chats. What? Bro's been smoking that 10th planet weed and made no sense. Thoughts on Billboard Chris's slight run on with the police in Australia. Don't know anything about it, but let me know about it. I also did injured disc when young, couldn't get a sudden diagnosis and it's never healed. Tried everything except surgery. I can't sit properly. Yeah, I reckon. I think the success rate for microdiscectomy is like 95%, but you need to know it's the right sort of injury for that treatment, right? But I can't even get fucking treatment. Like I've gone to the GP so many fucking times over the years, and they just send me to physio, and I'm like, you don't understand. Like I've been through this physio loop so many times, And then, you know, you just got these hopeless GPs who, it's like melancholia. Like they think of back pain as like some broad category, and they don't really understand treatments and things. They're like, well, you're young, so, you know, you'll be all right. And I'm like, yeah, sure, be all right when I blow my fucking brains out from chronic pain. But yeah, it's not too good. Not too good. And then you combine that with the sensory overload, the burnout. But it's all right. It's all right. I'm gonna watch some Andrew Tate. Watch some Andrew Tate hustle grind reels and smash it out. Yeah. Okay. At least an hour of this video is just pointless, but maybe the whole 3 hours of streaming. Anyway, thanks everyone. If God does not exist, pain doesn't. But at least, you know, what I think about is how glad I am that I'm not in a world where 10 billion people have a speck of dust in their eye. I was offered surgery finally. Then the consultant lost your details. How the fuck does that happen? Well, I mean, I don't know if I should moan about this online, but like, I will say that one motivating reason for me moving jobs was private healthcare. And let's just say that in principle, things may not be, suppose you move to a company where a lot of people got laid off and the finances weren't too good, and there was a Glassdoor review of someone saying they got fired when they were awaiting surgery. It might get you thinking that it's not the smartest move to use your private healthcare there to get healed, you know? Goddamn life. What I need to do is like work for Jane Street and, you know, build one React button a week and get £1 billion and private healthcare from them. If I can just modify my psychology and become evil, I can use the skills I have to do something that contributes no social value and makes so much money. And then I won't be in as much pain. But the problem is I will be in more pain. Government job benefits, you probably won't get private healthcare, is one thing. And the other thing is I'd be looking at, and I'm not even at my peak power level in terms of what salary I can pull in the next few years. You're looking at, like, from where I am now, almost a 50% pay cut for most civil servant jobs in software. And it gets me thinking all kinds of questions of who are these people that they can hire. Now, maybe I hope that the people that are applying and that they're hiring are people who are like taking the pay hit out the goodness of their heart. But when I'm seeing head of UK cybersecurity, £50,000 per year, it's getting me, you know, there are mid-level developers in e-commerce companies making, you know, I know someone who went to a React bootcamp and got paid more than that in their first job after 4 weeks of a React bootcamp. Like, it's a mess. So, like, one thing I thought, for example, is one of my special interests is fighter planes. I really like, so you might think, America, oh dear Americans, that the F-47, named after your dear leader, is the first 6th generation fighter that's been announced. False. Fake news. BAE announced the Tempest, British built, months earlier, right? And I was thinking, oh, maybe it'd be cool to work on the Tempest. You look at the salaries they're paying software engineers to work on the Tempest, and you know that what you would be doing in that job is awful. You'd be giving yourself carpal tunnel, filling in these shitty doors requirement systems and working with horrible legacy C++ code. And what will you get paid for it? Like 35 grand. It's insane. What competent C++ engineer, it looks at the job market and goes, well, I could get paid 35 grand, but I think I'll turn down 120,000 from fucking London Stock Exchange Group for a C++ programmer because I can get 35 grand in Zone 7. Like, no one's making these choices. Yeah, that's true as well. IR35. That is true. The contracting game is big bucks. True. But still, you know what I mean? Like, it's a bit of a mess. And I don't get it. Like, why don't they just, if they just, the cost it would be to them to just bump these salaries up a bit is not that much. And I don't know. And the other thing that gets me with a lot of these organizations is, well, internal company politics. I do not have time for fucking politics. Like, people with psychologies that need working on, climbing the greasy pole, brown nosing, all that stuff. I don't care. Like, if I think that something is false, I want to just be able to say, I don't think that's true. There's a better way of doing this. I think your reasons are mistaken. I don't care if it will tread on the wrong person's toes and they'll feel bad and they'll have a narcissistic injury and then they want to make you look bad to this person. Like, I don't want to play any of those stupid games. And that's just everywhere because not enough people have autism. And the second problem is software development lifecycle. So many places are managed and ran by people who do not understand technology and do not understand how to build software products. And so they do all these cargo cult practices of like sprints over a certain period of times, pointless meetings. Tell me about what you're doing instead of doing it every day. Like, going through the motions, context switching, working to arbitrary timelines because it's the done thing, wasting time on story points and estimations and things. Just, it's just completely meaningless in my, like, so there's like the model that most useless people who deal with software work with is like the Ptolemaic model of the universe, where they waste like hours of people's time each week getting them to essentially roll dice and average out a score and randomly stick it on tickets in Jira. And it's got nothing to do with the software that they have and what needs building in that software. And it's just insane that people can't see this. Like, you know, some people think that like the Fibonacci sequence is like the measure of what? Well, it's not meant to be how long it takes, the complexity, how long it takes to do. Who fucking knows? It's a measure of God knows what in God's mind for building software. Why the Fibonacci sequence? Why not 4? What's wrong with 4? It's just stupid. Or should we, you know, have a ticket to re-estimate the story? Like, just do things. Just, here's the problem with the software. Let's just fix it. Let's just do that. Let's not talk about it. Let's not context switch. Let's not come up with a pointless number and give it a feeling color assignment. But how can we bean count without the numbers? Don't stop bean counting. It doesn't work. It has all of these negative feedback effects on things that you actually care about working. in terms of the processes. Oh well, rant over. More I could say. Many people have said, but just yeah, it's just insanity. The whole thing. And this is why I can't do the politics as well, because this is what's going on in my head, and I have to lie to myself to be like, I love the story points. You know, like all these organizations where you've got like people who are not and have not been connected to the actual issues in the software for a very long time, driving everything, or people who are in these positions because they went Oxbridge, right? It's like, oh, they're Cambridge grad, they'll be good at managing people. That they deserve to be on top of some, you know, they deserve to be calling the shots. And you know, you have to live in their world and be like, you know, go at quarter speed, carrying the sandbags backwards and forwards because they think that you have to. Yeah, and then you're not a team player if you point out problems and try and sort of like, no. And you don't realize the effects it has. The good people leave. The people who stay harbor these resentments, or they know the battles ain't worth fighting. Like, it just create, you know, it makes everything bad. It really does affect things. But or maybe I'm the one. Maybe I'm the problem. No, I don't think so. The reason I say I don't think so, hopefully, is because I've read and listened to enough like very good engineers who worked at the best companies in the world saying the same things as I believe about these processes. And even the people, you know, like there's a good blog post by the guy who invented story points on this, or like, you know, OG shit, Mythical Man Month, all that. Normie world, got a mask 24/7 and do stupid things. Bad. What, Gordon Brown? This is your fault, Gordon Brown. You were meant to protect me, Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown, why didn't you give? You should have just put me on the special farm. Here's what I wanted, Gordon Brown. I wanted you to create a special school for special people like me, and just put me on the farm with computer, where everything is computer. And yeah. You can't make a baby by getting 9 women pregnant. Yeah, but how about this? How about, you know, the opposite by fucking like shouting at a woman's foot. You know, you can't make a baby by shouting at a woman's foot to do it in a week as angry as you can. You know, a quarter of a woman. I don't know if maybe Gordon Brown's wife has a horrible friend, right? Point is, what you are meant to do, Gordon Brown, is make a special farm, put me on the special farm and go, I don't care. I will just give me like a bed and computer and just let me think about things. And I would like build your Wikipedia. I would cultivate your data. I would give you metrics on things in society, because I just want to do that stuff naturally, but I just can't cope with all these fucking neurotypical people trying to have sex with each other and buy Nike trainers. I can't deal with it. It makes no sense. They make no sense. They're all crazy, and they make me sad. Stop making me live around it. I just want to talk about like how CPUs work and I don't know, that entropy and what information is and the history of the microcontroller and stuff like that. And I want to think about those things. I want to understand those things. I do not want to play the game of fucking each other and buying Nike trainers. I do not care. I don't want to buy Nike trainers. I'm not interested in the iPhone, other than if we're going to talk about the history of Apple computers and the history of IBM and their hardware architectures. I just don't care. And why aren't companies utilizing this as well? If you think about it, if you could harness, if you think about the power of autism, right? Like, autistic people will, who remembers when Shia LaBeouf did that work of art where he kept putting a camera on like a flag in different places, and neurotypicals, they wouldn't even know about this. They wouldn't know about the law. They wouldn't know what happened. But think about the power of autism is that wherever in the world, like, he moved this flag like 50 times, and wherever in the world that flag went, people found it from like looking at the sky and the light and the clouds and the time of day. That is the power of autism. And the problem is that this autistic power is harnessed towards things like that. And then what people do in their jobs is they make the autistic people go crazy, because they make them talk about stupid story points and planning increments and buying the Nike trainers all day, and they have to mask and be and feel pain and sensory overload, instead of you supercharging them with their special interests, like aligning their special interests with shit your company needs doing, and being like, go 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 go, and they will fucking go, and they will do it like 24/7. But no, let's not do that. Let's work to the Nike trainers, because we got to buy the Nike trainers. And I say no. No, I don't say no. It's what other choice do I have? Free to choose what bridge I want to starve under. Well, we went very far from topic. You should do a TED talk on this. This is my TED talk. This is my autism safe space. Actually, this is honestly one of the ways my girlfriend was like saying that I have to recover from autistic burnout. Not streaming necessarily, but she was like saying that I need to like indulge in my special interests, because having to mask all the time around people is part of what's burning me out. And I need to just be going like bathing in the information of all of this stuff, and expressing myself in the ways that I like and think. Psh, psh. Boy video. Never watched this. What you just described is fairly commonplace for autistics in cybersecurity. Wait, the good thing or the bad thing though? Because if it's the good thing, hell, I'm going and working there. If it's the bad thing, then misery, as I find more information. Am I a mess now? I mean, mostly, I don't know. Mostly. Make me doubt myself. The good thing? My God. Where do I need to work? Cybersecurity. OffSec. Oh, this is, I'll tell you the genuine problem about this is, for UK, you need to get like SC/DV clearance, and I'm adopted, and so to do that, I have to fill in a form where I put my parents' birthdays, and I don't want to ask them what their birthdays are. So unfortunately, that job is ruled out. And it's a mandatory field. I would hire you if not for the stretchy collagen. Oh, they did a thing on the Nike shoe. No, it's not that. It's just that it's always crepes. It's always things that I just don't get. Like, why do people care about shoes? Why do people care about the iPhone? I don't know what the other things are, like some kind of finance car or something. There's also usually like some celebrity thing that I don't get as well happening. Is my Nike socks fetish a special interest? I have no idea. Yeah, status. Maybe it's status symbols, but it doesn't even say status to me. Like when I see someone with a shiny new BMW, I think financially irresponsible and poor. And this is because, you know, I have information in my head about the median salary, right? I know what the median salary in the UK is. So I know what my prior should be for what a person's earning. And so when I see that they got that, I'm thinking, here's probably the case that they are spending a large portion of their income every month on payments for that, paying off the interest of that shitty car that is depreciating in value. And so I don't see that and think, wow, that's a wealthy person. I see that and think that's a poor fool, you know, most of the time. Same with like designer clothes and stuff. Because again, like I earn well and I know what it's like for me. And I'm like, I don't want to be dropping 500 quid on clothes. So if someone's dropping 500 quid on clothes, I'm like, what do your finances actually look like, right? Do you have emergency savings? Do you have, you know, stocks and shares, ISA? Do you have a pension? Stuff like that even. I guess they must, right? My Spectrum buddy does system security testing for Boeing, works from home and sounds all day, trying to break into their systems. No, they'll get you working in the office in the UK is what they'll do. A lot of jobs at MDBA going in the UK, but I don't know how I'd feel about making missiles, even if they are the best missiles in the world. Yeah, if you aren't into the thing is, I'm into status, but based off of like, I want to actually do stuff that I think is valuable, and I want people to be like, oh wow, that's cool, or like see that it has brought value into the world. So that's what I care about. Like I want to do something that is actually good and have people recognize it, but not like I want people to just, but I don't want to just like randomly have someone be like, oh, you're a good person because you wore some shoes. Like Hitler wore some shoes. Fair play, fair play. I mean, you take it up with them. Rogan's crew of comics being the top. Yeah, that's true as well. They are the least funny people in comedy. Like, oh yeah, look what I did. Let me tell you about Skoda. Skoda cost me £3,000. I bought Skoda for £3,000 cash. Bosh. Skoda is the best car I've ever driven. I've driven brand new, you know, 30, 40k cars, you know, that I could be financing for years. Skoda 3k, perfect. Like Skoda can top out 140 miles per hour. Do I need to go faster than 140 miles per hour? No. You know, Skoda can like 0 to 60 in like, it's like 7 or 8 seconds or something. Do I need to be faster than that? No. Skoda can fit 5 people in and a bunch of shit in the truck. Do I need more in the trunk? Do I need more people in my car? No. Skoda's parts are all manufactured, replaceable. Skoda's insurance is cheap. What else do I need from like Skoda's just fucking amazing. Best thing in my life, Skoda. I can't even get her a new timing belt. Skoda is coming up to 100,000 miles, and I'm thinking that for Skoda's birthday, 100,000 mile birthday, I will do like new timing belt, new water pump. I need rear coils because I'm hearing those rear coils rusted out when I go over bumps sometimes. But other than that, the other thing, EGR, I need to sort out the EGR. DPF keeps regenerating. DPF's all good, but the EGR could be a problem. But everyone who messes with EGRs is dodgy, and I don't want someone dodgy messing with Skoda's electronics. So maybe I have to figure out how to do it myself, which in principle I should be in a good position to do, right? Because I am a software engineer. So maybe they're reciprocally enacting social norms to create predictability because they don't have the capacity of self-to build. I don't know. I don't think people need a philosophical system, but what I do think it's just that they're just following these random like social norms, and that's how they live. And to me, it's like the emperor has no clothes. Really? Really? They do that? That's crazy. I couldn't even find... I don't even know if they'd remember. Elementary school teacher. Fucking good luck with that. I'd be interested to see what they find out about me. The other problem for me, of course, is that I have this shitty YouTube channel. So any jobs I apply for, people are probably Googling my name, finding this, watching this video and going, oh, he doesn't like agile. Everyone must be an agile practitioner. One question I got once was like, which do you prefer, Scrum or Kanban? And I was like, is this a joke? Like, I hate them both. How dare you make fun of the story pointing system? It brings my life meaning. Yeah. Toyota, not the Land Cruiser. What was the Top Gear car that they tried to kill? Toyota. That's the ultimate one. That 1990s Toyota. It's not a Corolla. Story points are the one true way to... Hilux, that was it. Story points are the one true way to measure software work. But it's not a measure of time, okay? Even though the only thing that the people who use them care about is time. It's not a measure of time. Because we know enough about software to know that putting times on things is a mistake. Wisconsin. What's going on in Wisconsin? Is that a Congress vote? Oh, fucking, don't get me started on agile coaches. I remember this one place I worked where there were two 20-year-old software engineers who both of them individually knew more than the director of engineering about software engineering. I have no idea. This guy had no technical background whatsoever. I have no idea what business, and he was doing a digital transformation, right? A digital transformation. And he kept bringing in these fucking people from consulting companies to be like agile coaches, like Scrum Captain, Agile Coach, Digital Agile Transform Lead. And these were people who had been like junior developers for 6 months, decided they couldn't hack it and moved into being like agile consultants, and it was fucking awful. Like, what the fuck? Why do you want to pay some junior developer 5 times as much to do no work and make your meetings 3 times as long as they need to be? Why are you doing that? You're crazy. Like, do you hate money? God, it gets me wound up just thinking about it. And I had to sit through that for a year, just watching this guy splurge like millions. And then, the company went into liquidity. And obviously the reasons, this was a fairly big company, so reasons why it went into liquidity are like more complicated than just his decisions. But like, knowing the costs of some of the things he was doing and being like, I swear to God, if I just had any kind of little bit of decision-making power, I could have, but then there would have been all the politics of having to coexist with people who are like that as well. Short of me being a supreme leader and like draining the swamp of people like that, don't know actually how to be effective. But I swear, like with these 2 20-year-olds, I could have done more than was possible in the organization with all the bloat. And I'm genuinely serious. This was one of the like most unjust things in the world. I was like, this fucking 20-year-old, just a React dev, but like a really good React dev, knows more, can do more practically minded, understands the business better than this guy who just keeps like spending money on pointless shit, says we're a family once every 3 months, wants a Mac because it looks good but does no work. Just fart sniffer. And then, okay, I'm gonna say something risky that makes this all too identifiable for the people who are. But those of you who know about the post office scandal that happened last year, so this is where the post office contracted Fujitsu to build a computing system, and there were errors in the accounting on that computing system for various reasons, and a bunch of people got prosecuted for stealing when they weren't. It was the computing system that was a problem. So there's this massive political scandal last year about this this computing system and the Fujitsu contract. So post office are right up in the under the limelight of political scrutiny in the UK, right? And so they want to make the safest decisions possible. Now, who can imagine who they're going to hire to be their, I'm not going to give the official job title, but let's say it's like director / C-suite level role related to agile digital transformation. Maybe it's going to be the same guy who put this last company into liquidity and knew less than a 21-year-old React dev. Maybe, that is the world, people. That is the world. And that person is pulling, I don't know what they pull in salary, but it is greater than 6 figures per year. And Frank Jurek is a millionaire. Like, just put that in perspective. Like, it's crazy. What is literally crazy. Supreme Court justice race. So does that mean, is this the opportunity to replace one of the Supreme Court justices? And is the person who's gone out from the GOP or the Democratic Party? The world needs more smart fellas and less fart smellers. Hey, yeah, that's probably right. Maybe that's right. All I'm going to say, William Lane Craig is a multimillionaire, and I'm not joking. William Lane Craig is a multimillionaire. Seriously. Like, and this is what I find inspiring. Is like, sometimes I'm like, look, life's so hard and all that. But then I think about these people who do nothing and have these really good lives. I'm like, look, if they can do that, there's a way. There's a way. There's a way. Oh, great. So it's possible that you will get another MAGA judge in place, right? And is there like voter suppression around this in the state it's in? Wisconsin? Was it Wisconsin? Did you say? I don't know. I haven't sold enough course. Yeah, embrace the grift. No, I refuse. The autism won't let me become a grifty start Hustlers University 3.0. I refuse. Oh, the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So this is not the Supreme Court. This is the Wisconsin Supreme Court, right? Who cares? Courts don't matter in America anymore anyway. Trump does what he wants. Musk has done millions into this race. Tesla. I love Tesla. Autists are deontologists by nature. I don't believe in natures, but I think a lot of autists are deontologists, probably. I mean, it depends what you mean. Like, I don't think they would self-describe that way. So, yeah, I know he has given out. But he did the same in the election, right? He was giving out millions to people as well. Musk is opening a SpaceX village in Salisbury. Okay, probably shouldn't say this publicly, but who cares? Again, I'm going to do it. This will become meme in the future. If this is true, that Musk is opening a SpaceX port village factory in Salisbury, and he's here through a lot of 2026, right? It's building. I actually don't know if I'm joking when I say this, that I will become a domestic terrorist. It depends how messed up the world is. If it continues on its current trajectory, I do kind of feel like me and Skoda are going to be in the news. Do you know what I mean? Like, the world is so messed up. But that is satire. Like Alex Jones, I'm playing a character on my YouTube channel. Just like Alex Jones plays a character on Infowars.com, as was revealed in the court case of the Alex Jones Sandy Hook trials. Elon Musk sounds like some overpriced cologne. The saddest thing I find about Musk too is, you know, when you like listen to him sometimes, there's like this there is this occasional sense of like goodwill and misguided autistic guy that kind of comes through. But there's also a lot of like messed up evil in there as well. And there's like just no way of providing the pushback to get him back. His skin's like a second tier Nathan skin. Crowdfund me a bulldozer, 500 pounds of plate steel and a welder. Well, this is the thing that actually genuinely worried me about this. So if you look into the SpaceX village in wherever it is in the US, you know, there's these people in a town, and he built this spaceport like in their town, and he decides to get involved in the engineering behind how the launch site is to be built. And one of the things he did was he said, oh, no, we don't need a heat sink at the bottom of the pad. And they were like, no, we do need a heat sink. We're rocket scientists. He's like, I'm the chief engineer. I'm a genius. Gets them not to do it. And because of this decision, it causes the rocket to explode. And then the rocket covers all the people's houses in a coating of dust that they're breathing in that contains very healthy chemicals for humans. Now, this is being invested funded by the FAA, who have now been disbanded from, you know, the people who were involved in that investigation. So my worry is like he's just going to come to the UK. It's going to be the same thing, like exploitation, harming our environment here in the UK. And I do really care about the environment. Like, I don't want some apartheid billionaire come into my country and harming my environment. That angers me. Actually, I value my environment more than his life. Like, I know that sounds bad, but I do. I value the UK countryside more than Elon Musk's life. So we'll see. But he ain't welcome in my country. And I think like 90% of people in this country agree with me as well. The thing is, he can't actually come here though, can he? He's been summoned by Parliament. And also, if he's here, don't the EU have like an extradite order or something on him for some things to do with legal cases around X? I think so. I don't know. I also definitely can't go to America now, especially when whenever I'm in these like political chats and things, and there's like die-hard MAGA people, and I'm like disagreeing with them about what's happening, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to report you to the FBI, going to report you to the CIA, Secret Service." I'm like, right, sure, but the thing is, America's that crazy that probably would, like, if I went over there, get like stopped at passport control, I'd be like, "That's a YouTube video, time to send you to a camp." It's just not worth it. Okay, can make some food. It's not like that here yet. I don't know. I'm not so sure about that, Shaq. I wouldn't be so sure if I was you. I heard things through the grapevine. I seen things through the internet.